Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you love Naruto fanfics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Let's begin with part 2. Naruto rams his boot heel into the left eye of one Dodo Kazuhana, soon to be former daimyo of the Land of Snow. Behind the pair were Naruto's queens feeding on the remains of Dodo's guards with one on her knees in complete and abject fear shining in her green eyes. Monster, Dodo hisses, struggling to force Naruto's boot off his face. Naruto smirks and turns into a pirouette on Dodo's face, causing the man to scream in pain and clutch his destroyed face as Naruto backflips away. The blonde lands with a perfect 10 stance with his arms up, shifting his gaze to Dodo's last guard. He has a pale tone, a thin and bony face, teal eyes and a narrow nose. He also has a Hapuri-style Hittite with long purple hair in long a ponytail running down his back, along with a long, thin strand of purple hair hanging over the right side of his face. Damn you, the man hisses. Naruto grins with a callous smile on his face as his Colt forms in his right hand, now Nadare Roga. No need to get angry with me, he says, firing a shot into Dodo's right leg. Dodo screams and falls to one knee with his cut-up face on display, but Naruto puts one between his eyes and he crumples. Yugao, bring me Fubuki, Naruto says, slipping the Colt into his back waist. Yugao pulls Fubuki to her feet as blood covers her mouth and chest armor, while the pink hair snow ninja shakes in fear. Nadare glares at Naruto heatedly, but the wooden vines keep him rooted to the ground, his gaze sparing a glance to Mizor's corpse with Anko currently devouring his corpse as some sort of snake creature. Now before you die, Nadare Roga. You will witness firsthand your fate, Naruto says, slowly holding out his hand to Fubuki. The blonde vampire's blue eyes glow and Fubuki's green eyes glaze over, as she slowly takes his hand and he spins her around to face Nadare. Naruto rips open the neck and shoulder of Fubuki's uniform to expose her neck as his right hand grasps her under her chin. Naruto covers Fubuki's mouth as he bites into her neck, causing her scream in pain as he drinks her life away. Fubuki's eyes flutter in pain and slowly glaze over as she falls from Naruto's grasp and hits the floor with a blank look on her face. Well, she died with a little pleasure. You won't get that, Naruto says, walking towards Nadare. He glares at the blonde but spits at his feet and Naruto pulls his Colt out, placing it to Nadare's head. Go and protect you master in hell, Naruto says, blowing Nadare's head open. Numerous hungry tendrils burst from Naruto's body towards the corpses of Fubuki and Dodo, dragging both towards his breaking down body. The Ice Queens watch in fascination as Naruto absorbs all three bodies. I'll never get used to see that, Hana says, and the other nods. My clones have dealt with the rest of Dodo's forces, Naruto says, standing to his full height and rolls his neck. Now the princess has her kingdom back, Anko says. And all it took was a genjutsu of us and her broken. Violated and killed, Hana comments. Naruto shrugs his shoulders with the light of a cigarette. Just imagine if Gramps assigned a genin team, he says. None of them are ready. Guy's team maybe, Kurenai muses. And that is pushing it. Kakashi Senpai may have pushed for it. If not for Nei getting to her first, Yugao states. Regardless. We're done here and Lady Koyuki has her home returned. So let's go get the wayward princess, Naruto says and all of them nod. A week later, Naruto and his queens were standing in front of Koyuki Kazuhana, rightful daimyo of Snow Country but now renamed Spring Country. The treasure Koyuki kept safe, that her uncle coveted, was actually a key to heat generator. The generator, a final gift from her late father Sosetsu Kazuhana, to bring spring to their frigid homeland. Thank you for putting Koyuki-sama back on her rightful throne, says Sandeu-sama, her faithful guard. Koyuki nods slightly to the five with a slight blush towards Naruto. Yes, thank you. You managed to awaken my frozen heart, she says. Think nothing of it, Koyuki. We all hope for someone to save us, Naruto says. Sandeu approaches and hands Naruto a scroll. Inside is a document about a possible trade agreement with Konoha, he says, and Naruto bows at the waist. You are most kind. We will see ourselves out, Naruto says, bowing again at the waist with his queens. Must you leave so soon? Koyuki asks. Unfortunately, yes. We all have obligations in Konoha that require our attention. However, we will be having our Chunin exams in about 2 months. Perhaps you can come for the finals a month later, Naruto says. I will think about and again thank you for saving my country, Koyuki says, and the five excuse themselves. She'll be a good ally for us and place to hide if needed, Kurenai says, once they leave the palace. Always best to have contingencies, Naruto muses, as they head towards the harbor. Victoria was waiting for them with one of Gato's old ships. We are ready to depart, she says, wearing a purple business attire and a ruby necklace around her neck under a black coat. Good, and have the captain set a course to hot water, Naruto says, as they board and Victoria bows. Well, that was a productive mission, Anko muses. Naruto plops on the large bed in their private room. Indeed. I learned more Hyoten Jutsu and you all gained more souls, he says, his clothes melting away to a pair of shorts and a white long-sleeve shirt. The four queens strip away their clothes in a similar fashion and climb into bed with their man. Should we fool around before sleeping? Anko coos, settling atop the blonde. Sleep first. All the swaying is annoying, Naruto says, and Anko pouts but settles on his mid-chest. Yugao takes Naruto's left arm and Kurenai takes the right, while Hana shifts to his waist above his manhood. A clone pops to life and seals the room to allow them sleep, also to give orders to the crew and Victoria. Konohagakure, Lime start. Tenten sighs softly as she lays on a bed with no sheets, her fit and body on display as she touches herself. Her calloused but nimble left fingers running down her toned waist to her maidenhood, while her right hand kneads her modest B-cup. The weapon's mistress opened her eyes, but her gaze drifts left to see a woman with long black hair but couldn't see her face. The woman moves closer and kisses Tenten on the lips, which she gives into as she was a burgeoning. Tenten feels her head move to another woman, but she has black hair with a bluish tint, however again she couldn't see their full face. Ah! Tenten cries, as someone was licking her sacred area, and she looks down to a third woman with long purple hair, but soon a fourth faceless woman with brown hair joins. Tenten moans with eyes closed as the four women molest her form, but she opens them to see a pair of blue eyes, however everything goes white and Tenten awakes with a start. Scene break. Lime end. Tenten looks around with unfocused eyes. What was that? Those women. Why couldn't I see their faces? She whispers, moving her sheets and finding her panties soiled. Cold shower then a workout, Tenten thought. The weapon's mistress makes a few laps around the village after a shower, but her mind was plagued by her dream. Oh, good morning Ten, a very familiar voice shouts. Tenten turns to run backwards slight to see Guy and Lee. Morning, she shouts, as the pair pass her. Tenten finishes her workout and heads back home, finding her adopted parents up and about. Early morning Ten-chan, her mom Natsuko asks. She has dark hair and eyes with a modest figure. Yeah, I couldn't sleep, so I did a few laps around the village, Tenten says, glancing to her dad Jinbo. He's an imposing man with gray hair and blue eyes but teddy bear at heart. Something wrong Tenten? Jinbo asks, but she shakes her head. Nothing. Just thinking, am I doing enough for the exams? Tenten says. Her team was taijutsu oriented due to Lee's lack of chakra and Neji's reliance on his family's taijutsu. She herself was oriented to weapons and neglected other facets of ninja skills, save fuinjutsu for her weapons. I'm sure you will do alright. However, you don't have to rush to be promoted. I still remember seeing you after that horrible mission. Thank Kami for the Anbu, Natsuko says, and Tenten remembers that mission to Frost. Her team was ambushed by missing Nin from Kumo and Neji flew into a rage, compromising the mission, but luckily Naruto swooped in and saved them, or namely her. Tenten's breath slight hitches. Those blue eyes were like Naruto's. Did I have a wet dream about him? She thought. Ten-chan, you're all red. Are you sure you're okay? Natsuko asks and Tenten waves her hands. No, I'm alright. I'm gonna take a nap and meet my team later, Tenten says and quickly excuses herself. Maybe I should go see Naruto, Tenten thought, going for a nap. A few hours later, Tenten stands with her team, Lee spouting about youth with Guy and Neji standing with his eyes closed. Tenten admitted to herself she had a small crush on the Hyuga clan member, but his obsession with fate soured any and all chances. He hates Hinata for being in main family but still bows to her. He claims fate cannot be changed, but he does by hating her and wanting to harm her, Tenten thought. Training for Team 3 was the same each time as she trained with her weapons, while Guy trained taijutsu with Neji and Lee. Guy-sensei, I wonder if you could teach me some ninjutsu, Tenten asks and Guy cups his chin. Well, my youthful student, I do not rely on ninjutsu and that wouldn't be fair to Lee. Who can't? Perhaps you can visit my rival, Guy says. Tenten slowly nods, but internally she was angry. I think I will, Guy-sensei. Do you know where he is? She says. Training ground 7 with his team, Guy replies and Tenten excuses herself. The bun-hair Kunoichi makes her way to training ground 7 and finds TEAM 7. What are you doing here, Tenten? Hinata asks, doing some juken katas. I'm looking for Kakashi-sensei. Guy-sensei sent me to see if he would teach me some ninjutsu, Tenten explains. Why should Kakashi teach someone from another team? Sasuke says. Aren't we all Konoha ninja? Karen says, balancing on one of the wooden stumps. Mama, I don't see why not, but with the Chunin exams in 2 months. I would hate to give an advantage to another team, Kakashi says, reading his ICHA and Tenten frowns. How about me then? Naruto says, walking up. Tenten glances back to Naruto and her cheeks become a little pink. Well, I don't see why not. Will that work? Naruto is ninjutsu heavy due to his reserves, Kakashi says. Sure, that is fine. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei, Tenten says and Kakashi gives her his trademarked eye smile. Follow me then, Naruto says and Tenten quickly follows the blonde. So what brought this on? He asks. I wanna be more prepared for the exams. I think I'm too overspecialized, Tenten replies, as they find an empty training ground. Naruto pulls a piece of chakra paper from his vest. First we need to know your elemental affinity. Just channel some chakra into this paper, he says, handing it to Tenten. She channels her chakra and the paper wrinkles to signify a lightning nature. Raiden, Tenten says. Interesting. You can channel Raiden through ninja wire or your weapons, Naruto says, going to a tree and kicks it to knock some leaves down. So how does this work? Tenten asks. Naruto hands Tenten the leaves but hold up one. You must be able to crinkle leaf with your chakra by changing it to Raiden, he says and splits the leaf with his futon. Easier said than done, Tenten says and Naruto adjusts his sunglasses. You may be able to learn a jutsu by the time exams start. I'll check on you once a week and see how you do, okay? Naruto says. Right. Thanks, Naruto, Tenten says and excuses herself, to meet back up with her team. Once Tenten was gone, Yugao drops down in her full Anbu gear. Dragon has called a meeting, she says. Naruto slips off his sunglasses and they shift into his Anbu mask. Let's be on our way, Neko, he says, slipping it on and both vanishing. Scene break. Anbu HQ. As you all know, the Chunin exams are in 2 months. Which means increased patrols with the influx of visitors and foreign ninja. Dragon starts, sitting with several of her captains. However, one of you will have very unique role for the exams. Namely Yukaya Ketsuki. Sandaime-sama wants you be the proctor for the second round preliminaries if necessary. Also his guard for the finals as well, Dragon adds. Naruto remains silent with his arms folded and his hood hiding his face. On your order, he says, his voice distorted. What if there aren't any preliminaries? Rhino asks. Then he'll do my paperwork. If they happen. You're doing it, Rhino, Dragon says, causing a few silent sniggers. I heard Senpei will enter his rookie team. Yuhi and Sarutobi are doing the same, Neko says. They want to show off the last Uchiha, Kuma states, his large arms folded. Of course. Home turf. The padding of our teams will help him pass to the second round, Al comments. Regardless, it's our job to protect the great tree. Dismissed. Dragon states and the captains file out of the room. Kayaketsuki, Rhino says and Naruto stops to turn to him. No hard feelings on doing Dragon's work, Rhino says but Naruto smirks behind his mask. Right, but you should know Rhino. Never bet against me, Naruto says and vanishes, with Leaf Shunshin. Dragon taps Rhino on the shoulder with a smirk behind their mask. Make sure your handwriting is perfect, Dragon says and Rhino freezes. Dragon reaches their office and finds Naruto waiting for them. You have your orders. What, you don't like them? Dragon says. No. It's just you're picking on Rhino. I almost feel bad, Naruto says and Dragon snorts. I hear the pervert is coming soon, Dragon says, taking a seat at their desk. He has no idea about my changes or that I'm in Anbu. Gramps felt best not to tell him, Naruto muses, slipping a cigarette into his mouth and light it with a silver Zippo. He more than likely believes you are a newly minted genin in need of his teachings. However, you are a near S-rank shinobi and engaged to 4 women, Dragon comments. True, Naruto muses and pulls 2 photos out of his coat, tossing them to Dragon. Dragon's breath hitches at the photo of man with spiky orange hair, his eyes purple with a rippled pattern. The second photo is of a woman with blue hair and amber eyes, along several piercings with a flower in her hair. How accurate is this? Dragon asks. Confirmed. Hanzo no longer rules AIM but a man called Pain. Danzo had dealings with the salamander but went dark years ago. Nei reported that the rain in the village is laden with chakra. So I sent clones in their place. The rain stops once a week on Sundays. So I took advantage and sent them in, Naruto starts. The woman is called Konan or Lady Angel. The man is called Pain. What is interesting is the cloak. Looks familiar, Naruto adds. Akatsuki. I've heard rumors about some group wearing those colors, Dragon states. We'll have speak to our vaunted spy master, Naruto says, rising to his feet. True. So how'd you get the photos? Dragon asks. Once the clones popped I used the henge, Naruto says, leaving Dragon's office. Over the next 2 months Naruto split time helping his team and Tenten. Karen used her Kage Bunshin to learn a few Doden Jutsu, while Tenten managed to finish her Raiden training and learned to channel Raiden through her weapons. Naruto also learned that his queens were affecting Tenten's dreams and driving the girl to him, which he didn't mind and allowed it. Chunin exams RD1 2 months later. Team 7 make their way to Konoha Academy with the redhead looking between her teammates. They enter the school and see the various teams milling about and making their ways upstairs to the 3rd floor. However, a scene was being made on the 2nd floor but marked 3rd, as several people were arguing with 2 people about being let in. Genjutsu, Karen whispers to Hinata and the Hyuga heiress nods. Hey, take down that stupid genjutsu, Sasuke shouts, shocking his teammates. Several of the genin grumble as the 3 becomes a 2 and they make their way up to the next floor. Team 7 reaches the 3rd floor and finds Kakashi waiting for them. Well, now you can officially begin the Chunin exams. These exams are team-based and if any of the 3 you didn't come, you would have been prohibited, Kakashi says. Now then, Hinata, Sasuke, Karen, good luck, Kakashi adds and steps aside, allowing the members of TEAM 7 to enter the exam hall. They seemed poised, a voice says and Kakashi looks up to see Naruto slinking out of the ceiling. You didn't have any parting words for them, Kakashi says. Naruto tilts his head but his face was hidden by his Anbu mask, nothing that would help them. Besides, Sasuke believes this is easy if a dobi like me can pass, he says, his voicing fading as he slinks back. Kakashi looks back at the closed door. If you still believe that Sasuke, then you are in for a rude awakening, he thought. Inside TEAM-7 were looking at the assembled genin as many were loitering about, causing Karen to sigh and calm herself from the key being thrown around. Sasuke-kun. Two voices shout and Karen sees Ino glomping Sasuke, with Sakura glaring at her. Karen decides to ignore the fangirls to look around the room and sees Team 3 near a corner, before approaching them. What do you want? Neji says, coldly. Leave her alone, Tenten says and Karen shoots him a glare. So is your team ready? Tenten adds. As we can be. Kakashi-sensei gave us 3 days of rest but Naruto only gave me 1, Karen says and Tenten blushes slightly. How is Naruto? I haven't seen him lately, Tenten says, to the shock of her teammates. Karen was about to reply when a fight broke out between someone in glasses and the genin from Oto. However, a large puff of smoke erupts at the front of the room. Enough. No fighting before the second round. Calm down or be kicked, a man says. He has several scars on his face with a blue bandana, wearing a gray uniform and black trench coat. Sorry we got a little excited, one says, his face bandaged. He wears a large poncho with long sleeves, a snake-patterned scarf around his neck, a straw raincoat protruding from the back of his scarf, and a large amplifier on his right arm. Whatever. Now everyone take a seat. My name is Ibiki Morino and I am the proctor for the first round of the Chunin exams, the man declares, as 12 similarly dressed ninjas stand behind but with no coats. Alright, now that I have your attention. Everyone take a number and go to your assigned seat. Then we'll pass out the tests, Ibiki states, holding a number 1. Scene break. The sound of an electric guitar echoes near the main gate of Forest of Death, the source being Naruto on a raised platform with a haunting solo. Anko was also sitting on the platform with a dango stick in her mouth and her body swaying to the tune. She's wearing black, form-fitting pants with heeled kunoichi boots to her knees, along with shin guards. A tight purple dress shirt with a low-cut corset vest, that pushes up her and a gray trench coat draped on her shoulders with black gloves. How's the first round going? Naruto asks. Anko covers her right eye to look at the room from one of her snakes. Going well. The rookies are still there. Oh, Ibiki's almost done. I better go, she says and vanishes. Naruto sighs and absorbs the guitar into his body with a sigh. I better go too, he says and explodes into a murder of crows. Back in the academy, Ibiki looks over the remaining genin but feels the room starting to chill. Ho. She's early, he thought. Hey, why is it getting cold? Kiba shouts, as Akamaru starts to whimper. The room lights start to dim and the room darkens, shocking many of the genin as Ki fills the room. Ibiki. You let 26 teams pass, a voice croons, seemingly from everywhere. Several screams erupt as snakes start to make their presence known. What are snakes doing here? Sakura screams. Kabuto adjusts his glasses with a hidden serious look. Anko Mitarashi isn't capable of such things, he thought. Don't worry though, I'll make sure to cut that number by at least half, the voice says. The snakes start to swirl and undulate together until they take a human shape but fall to the ground to die as Anko appears, her eyes a glowing purple and the whites of her eyes a black void. Hello foolish mortals, Anko croons. Many of the genin were immediately put off as fear seems to run rampant but suddenly everything returns to normal with Anko standing in front. I'm Anko Mitarashi, the Chunin exam's second round proctor. Now follow me to my playground, Anko says. Where the hell is your playground? One genin shouts and Anko grins wide. The Forest of Death, Anko says. About half hour later the genin were standing at the main gate of the Forest of Death. This is where the second round will take place. The 44th training ground or my playground, the Forest of Death, Anko starts and reaches in her coat. Now before we begin, I'll need to pass out these consent forms and you will sign them. This absolves our respective villages in case of death. The second round consists of a 5-day survival mission, Anko continues. Survival, Ino states. Anko reaches back into her coat to pull out 2 scrolls, one marked heaven and the other marked earth. The Forest of Death is made of 44 locked gates with a river and a tower in the center approximately 10 kilometers away. Each team will receive one of these scrolls. Your goal is to reach the center tower with both scrolls within the 5 days. How you get them is up to you, Anko explains. That doesn't seem so tough, Kiba shouts, but his cheek opens up, as Anko appears behind. The snake mistress licks some blood from Kiba's cheek and frightens the brother of her harem sister. I would beg to differ. Your blood is nearly as tasty as your sister's, Anko says, before walking back to the main gate. Now, there are some rules for this round. Bring both scrolls to the center tower and do not open the scrolls before you arrive. Lastly, you will need all your teammates to pass. So even if you get both scrolls, without your teammates you fail, Anko states. What about food? Choji shouts. Tough. There is plenty to eat. Now sign your forms and come get your scrolls, Anko replies. The genin talk amongst themselves, but unbeknownst to them a certain blonde vampire was watching. They seem to know the rules, but so do I, he thought, shifting his gaze to Redhead with Raken-like eyes. Grr. That's Shukaku's host. Those bags under his eyes are a dead giveaway, Kyubi comments. Gaara no Sabaku. Son of the Yondaime Cage, Naruto muses but smirks, seeing Gaara look in his general direction. He must sense you, Kyubi, Naruto says, and Kyubi snorts. Like that Tanuki compares to me, let alone you, Kyubi says. Ah, so you do think about me, Naruto says and smiles, seeing Karen looking directly at him. I'll need keep my distance, but I'll be shadowing them, Naruto thought, keeping gaze on a member of the KUSA team. Soon each team have their respective scroll and line up at the respective gates. Team 7 finds themselves at gate 12. You better keep your senses honed, Uzumaki, Sasuke says. I will also have my Byakugan, Hinata comments. One of the proctors unlocks the gate and checks his watch as the time ticks by, but the horns blare. Each team quickly rushes inside as the gates shoot open as the second round begins. Scene break. Screams soon fill the forest as the second round begins in earnest, but at the same time Anko sits under the shade of the booth near the main gate. Music to my slow beating heart, Anko thought. Oi Mitarashi, a voice shouts, and Anko opens her eyes to see Katetsu. What, I'm trying for a nap here, Anko shouts. We got 3 bodies, Katetsu says, and Anko furrows her brow. There is something odd about them, he adds. Anko sighs and rises to her feet to slip on her coat. Lead the way, she says, following Katetsu. The pair soon near 3 bodies near some Buddha statues. According to their ids there are from Kusa, but as you can the faces are missing, Azumo says. Anko tsks in a silent growl with narrow eyes as the white of her eyes bleed black. This is serious. Inform Lord Third. Also inform him to mobilize at least 2 Anbu squads. Go, she shouts, and both vanish. Naruto. Orochimaru is in the forest. He's impersonating a Kusa team, Anko thought. I thought as much. I'll play with him for a little while, Naruto replies, and Anko smirks. Happy hunting, my fox, Anko says. Music. Orochimaru fight theme. Sasuke glares heatedly at the KUSA ninja named Shior with his Sharingan glowing in the shadows. I still need to kill him. I will not die here, he thought, slipping a kunai in his mouth. Shior licks his lips with a wide grin, his gaze slightly shifting to Hinata as the Hyuga tries to recover from his Ki blast. Has your Uchiha blood awakened, Sasuke-kun? Shior sneers. Sasuke shoots across the branches towards Shior into a leap as the KUSA ninja sends a burst of chakra. Sasuke counters with several kunai, but Shior dodges as Sasuke maneuvers to a branch, launching off with a battle cry. The last loyal Uchiha sends a flurry of punches and kicks, but Shior blocks evenly and Sasuke keeps up. I can see, Sasuke thought, dodging and countering Shior's attacks. Shior picks up his speed, but Sasuke keeps up and counters with back-to-back fireballs, forcing Shior to change tactics and come at Sasuke through the tree branch. He's pretty good, Shior thought, sending another burst of chakra. Sasuke dodges as it tears through a large branch and closes the gap, grabbing Shior from behind into a plummeting piledriver. Sasuke quickly leaps back as Shior stays rooted in place, but he gasps as Shior melts into mud. Kawarimi, Sasuke thought, and quickly has to dodge a flurry of kunai. Sasuke uses ninja wire to propel himself around a large tree, but Shior catches him as he lands with a combination of punches, knees and elbows. Sasuke tosses a paper bomb to distract Shior as he leaps back, tossing shuriken with ninja wire attached. This is, Shior says. Sasuke yanks hard and pins Shior to a tree as he flashes signs to stop at Tiger, Kaden, Ruka no Jutsu, Sasuke shouts. The flames engulf Shior as he screams in agony, with the flames blowing a hole into the large tree. The flames die down as Sasuke tries to rein in his breath as Hinata slowly nears him, but both of them gasps as Shior easily breaks the wire, before using a paralysis jutsu on them. I'm impressed by your Sharingan use, but it pales in front of your brother. Sasuke-kun, Shior says, part of his face melted away and reveal pale white skin. Sasuke struggles to move as Shior touches his Hitai to reveal a musical note instead of the KUSA symbol. However, you can be so much more than him, he says, his voice changing. Who are you? Sasuke says. Shior holds up their heaven scroll. My name is Orochimaru, he says, but suddenly his neck extends like a snake. Hinata gasps as Sasuke screams in pain from Shior or Orochimaru's bite on his neck. Seek me out for more power, Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru says, after unlatching, and drops the scroll on the ground. Do enjoy my gift, Orochimaru adds, sinking into the ground. Hinata activates her Byakugan and scans the area as she retrieves their scroll. Where are you, Karen? She thought, checking on Sasuke. Song ends. Scene break. At the same time, Sasuke and Hinata were fighting for their lives. Karen was dealing with another team of genin from Konoha. Can we take her? One says. He has brown hair and eyes, wearing casual clothes with a weapons pouch. Karen quickly makes 5's clones and they charge to the genin. They're just illusions, the kunoichi says, having brown hair and gray eyes. Karen smirks as the clones kick each genin in the face as she flashes several signs, stopping at hair. Sweden. Mizoripa, Karen intones, firing a water blast and knocking out the genin. Karen quickly leaps away to search for her teammates, but she freezes as a thick blanket of ki erupts. Kukuku, a voice says. Karen slowly turns to Orochimaru standing behind her. Who are you? She says. Orochimaru licks his lips with a smirk on his face, but suddenly his head launches from a wide sword swipe, causing Karen to gasp as Naruto lands in front of her, but Orochimaru turns to snakes. Go, Karen, Naruto says, and the redhead leaps away. Naruto rolls his neck as Orochimaru appears again and stares back at him. Hello, Naruto-kun, he says. Kind of cowardly to run away from me, Snake. No matter. We'll see each other soon. Oh, one more thing. Anko says hello and she looks forward to when I mount you on my wall, Naruto says, and Orochimaru melts into mud. Naruto sheathes his Chikudo but glances back to see Karen. All told you to go, he says. I know, but I was worried, Karen says. Naruto ruffles his blonde hair and adjusts his Anbu mask. Come on. I'll take you to your team, he says, and both leap away. Naruto slowly as Karen keeps going. They're in the hollow tree, he thought, but his eyes narrow, sensing 3 near them. Karen lands in the clearing and makes her way to the tree, seeing Sasuke laying motionless and sweating. Hinata, Karen says, and the heiress looks up. Where have you been? Hinata says, slight anger in her tone. Karen kneels next to Sasuke with a sigh, after being blown away about that wind. I encountered a giant bear and then another genin team. I managed to knock them out and got their scroll, she explains, showing the earth scroll. Good, at least you were good for something. We were attacked by someone called Orochimaru and he marked Sasuke with something, Hinata explains and misses the frown from Karen. We'll stay here until the morning and make for the tower, Hinata states. What about Sasuke? Karen says, checking his vitals. Hinata looks down at the last Uchiha, he's starting to stabilize. He should awaken by then, she says, and Karen slowly nods. Scene break. Next morning. Team Dosu lead by Dosu with his teammates Zaku Abumi and Kintsuchi were keeping a close eye on the hollow tree for TEAM-7. When are we gonna strike? I want to get my hands on that redhead, Zaku says. He has spiky, black hair and dark eyes with a beige shirt having 2 black stripes, and 3 prints of the kanji for death. A Hapuri Hittite under the cloth rather than connected to the metal plate, with a snake-patterned scarf around his neck. Maybe we can sell the Hyuga's eyes, Kin says. She has fair skin, black eyes with very long black hair, tied by a violet ribbon right near the end. A pale green vest similar to a flak jacket, snake-patterned pants, skirt over it, and a snake-patterned scarf around her neck. Those are interesting thoughts. However, I can't allow that to happen, a voice croons. All 3 Oto ninja freeze, but before they could react, black roots ensnare them around their limbs. What the fuck is this? Zaku shouts but screams as his right arm is snapped in 2. This is for your thoughts on my family. Now instead of killing you 3, I'll give a bit of advice. The one you were sent to kill has the curse mark, the voice hisses and Dosu's breath hitches. Kin looks around in fear, but her eyes widen as a glowing eye emerges in the shadows of the bark, along with a white mask with only one eye visible. Why would Orochimaru-sama not tell us? Kin says. Frankly, I do not care. Now run along before I decide to devour your souls, the voice hisses, as mouths open among the shadows. The roots release them and Dosu looks with a wide eye. Let's go, he says. What? Are we gonna let some voice keep us from killing this Sasuke? Zaku shouts, clutching his broken arm. Dosu narrows his eye at Zaku. Fool. Your arm is busted and the Uchiha has the curse mark. We can't fight that. For now we'll fall back and inform Orochimaru-sama about this mystery entity, he says. Zaku tsks with a silent growl and vows to kill whoever it was that broke his arm. Come on, Dosu says, and the 3 leap away. A few minutes pass and Naruto slowly emerges from the ground, just as dark chakra fills the area as Sasuke emerges from the hollow tree. Well, let's see how he does. My clone should have hidden the others, Naruto says. Sasuke stands in the clearing with black markings running along his body and purple chakra wafting off his body. Yes, with this power I can kill him, he thought. Suddenly 3 nondescript genin from AIM appear in front of Sasuke. Hand over your scroll or die, one shouts. Sasuke continues to admire his power as one of them charges but locks eyes with Sasuke and freezes. Fool, Sasuke sneers, shooting forward and slitting his throat with a kunai. The other 2 quickly charge Sasuke, but the Uchiha weaves several signs and stops at Tiger, Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, he shouts, incinerating both. Sasuke grins as he listens to their dying wails, but as quickly as it appeared, his new power faded and the dark markings recede. Sasuke falls to his knees with several gulping breaths. This power. I will make it mine, he thought, slowly getting to his feet and returning to the tree. However, Sasuke didn't notice the 3 corpses pop into smoke. He didn't even hesitate to kill them. The curse mark brings one's dark thoughts and gives them an intoxicating feeling as well, Naruto muses, standing on a high tree. 2 Anbu with the designation of Crane and Mantis land on each side of him. Report, he says. We lost track of the target, Crane says. He's a snake after all, Naruto muses, feeling his clone's memories. Tokubetsu Jonin Mitarashi is heading to the tower as we speak and ask the Hokage to be advised, Mantis adds. Good, I will head there myself. Keep patrols tight and find out how the snake snuck into the garden, Naruto says, and both nod, vanishing. The pieces are starting to move, Naruto thought, vanishing as Karen and Hinata exit the tree to look around. Scene break. Anko sits on a blue sofa in one of the upper level rooms with 2 Anbu. It's distasteful, but we can't cancel the exams on the account of Orochimaru, she says. What do you mean? One Anbu says. However Anko could say anything, the door shoots open with one of the proctors from the first round. What is it? We're having a meeting, she shouts. Sorry ma'am, but you need to see this, the proctor says, holding a tape. Video, the second Anbu says. The proctor kneels and places the tape to play it for them, with it showing the Suna team entering the tower earlier. Look at the time, the proctor says. Anko narrows her eyes and her breath slightly hitches. This is accurate, she says. Yes. It was taken 1 hour and 37 minutes after the start of the round, the proctor says. Interesting. They broke the record by 4 hours, Anko says. Yes, they finished the exams in 97 minutes. That's unheard of. They cannot be genin level, the proctor says, but Anko giggles. It's not just that. Take a good look at the red head, Anko says, and the proctor looks closer, causing his eyes to widen in shock. Foo. You see now. He doesn't have a speck of damage or dirt on him, Anko says. We got quite an interesting fellow in the exams. Even though he has evil eyes, the second Anbu says. Anko makes her way to the large windows and opens it, regardless. Continue your search for that snake, she says, and both Anbu vanish, followed by the proctor excusing himself. Anko moves from the window as a murder of crows bursts in and informs Naruto. No joy, she says. He ran, Naruto says, rolling his neck and plopping on the sofa. He gave Sasuke the curse mark though, Naruto says, and Anko's eyes narrow. It's different from yours, he adds. This is bad. We'll need to pull the Uchiha from the exams, Anko says. You know the old man won't. He's the last loyal Uchiha. If he's pulled, it'll look bad on Konoha's image. Besides, once Senpai sees it, he'll seal it up, Naruto explains, slipping off his coat. You wanna hear something interesting? Anko says, taking a seat next to him. Naruto shifts and lays his head in Anko's lap. The Suna team finished in 97 minutes. The redhead didn't have a scratch on him, Anko says. That was a foregone conclusion. He's the Jinchuriki of the Aikibi, Naruto says, and Anko's breath hitches. Plus he's Orochimaru's linchpin, he adds. Anko frowns and strokes the shaved portion of Naruto's hair. I think we should tell the Hokage about the invasion, she says. No. This is Konoha's penance. Innocents will die, but it's time Konoha come off their high horse and the old man to see his actions brought this about, Naruto says, looking at the wall. Scene break. 3 days later. Karen stands with other Chunin hopeful as the Hokage speaks about the true meaning of the exams, while the proctors and jonin of each team stand behind them. Perhaps I should explain the rules of the third round, a voice says, catching the genin off guard. Hiruzen puffs his pipe and raises right arm even with his shoulder as Naruto lands in a crouch. Good ahead then, Hiruzen says. The genin murmur amongst themselves as Naruto looks at them from the shadows of his beaked hood. He now wears a black dress uniform jacket, which features a red lining along the torso with the lower half of the coat forming 2 tails. Completing his outfit with black pants into knee-high leather boots, having a high heel and a blood-red dress shirt with a black tie, and suit vest. Naruto places his hands on Hiruzen's arm and lifts to balance, before leaning forward and to the ground with his boots. Naruto reaches high and rams his hand into the shadows of his hood, to his elbow, and slowly pulls back. My name is Kayaketsuki and I will be the proctor of these preliminaries, Naruto says, revealing his pale white mask with no mouth or nose but the right eye covered by a black eye patch and left socket having a black tear streak. Preliminaries? Shikamaru questions. Yes. 21 of you passed, Naruto says and raises his index finger. That is too many of you for the third round, he adds and raises his middle finger. The finals take place in front of many important guests, as Lord Third said. I'm sure none of them would like sit through boring matches with weak people, Naruto continues and smirks, seeing some angered faces, and raises his ring finger. Now before we start, would any of you like to drop out, Naruto says. The genin stand and look between each other, but Kabuto raises his hand. I would like to drop out. My body is quite worn out, he says. Anko approaches with a clipboard and hands it to Naruto. Well, no wonder you've taken the exams 7 times. You're a fucking weakling, she sneers. Don't be rude to him. He is weak, yes, but a fellow Konoha ninja, Naruto says and looks over the remaining genin. Anyone else wish to quit like that excuse of a ninja, he adds. Kabuto hides a dark glare on his face as he leaves the testing area. No matter your bloodline. I will kill you, he thought. Well, since all of you are smarter than Kabuto, we can now begin the preliminaries, Naruto says. Wait a second, Anko says and roughly turns Naruto's head, pulling down his hood to reveal black hair with a red streak. Anko then shocks everyone by moving Naruto's mask to face them and deeply kissing him in front of everyone. No fair, Anko, Kurenai rages. What's stopping you? None of them know it's Naruto but Panda and Karen, Anko replies. Holy shit, Kankuro shouts. Team 8 gasps as Kurenai moves from her spot among the Jonin and marches up to Naruto and Anko, pushing the latter aside and kisses Naruto herself. Kurenai-sensei, Kiba shouts. Hiruzen suddenly coughs loudly to get their attention. If you're quite finished. Kayaketsuki, Anko, Kurenai, we would like to begin the preliminaries, he says, as Kakashi giggles and Asuma glares at Naruto. Anko places Naruto's mask back in place as he turns back to the group. Right. Now, unlike the first 2 rounds, these will be individual based one-on-one matches. Since 20 remain, we will have 10 matches, he states, raising his right pinky, ring and middle fingers. You will fight until someone dies. Collapses or gives up, but if the person gives up, the match is over regardless if you're going for the kill. Break that rule and pay the consequences, Naruto continues, dropping each finger. Naruto then holds up his clipboard. On here are the matches. Picked at random by R. Anbu. So I'll announce the first match. If you named isn't called, head to the upper area, he states. The tension slowly starts rise as Naruto keeps them waiting to sweat. The first match is Ino Yamanaka vs Sasuke Uchiha, he declares, shocking Ino and Sakura. Sasuke smirks internally but winces and grasps his neck. Easy win, he thought. Both of you step forward, Naruto declares, as the pair do so but Ino reluctantly. Everyone starts to make their way to the upper levels as Ino and Sasuke stand face to face, but Kakashi whispers something to Sasuke. Both combatants ready, Naruto shouts. Wait, I forfeit, Ino says. Naruto locks his visible eye on Ino with a sigh. Why? Do you not want to be promoted? He went through the same forest as you. You could pull off the upset, he says. No way. I couldn't fight Sasuke-kun, Ino says, and Naruto shakes his head. Fine, winner Sasuke Uchiha. You can both head to the upper levels. However, Yamanaka, you should give up entirely. You're a kunoichi of Konohagakure, not some pampered princess hoping for some boy to save you. I hope you watch the coming matches and see how real kunoichi battle, Naruto states and clears his throat, looking at his clipboard. The next match is Masumi Tsurugi vs. Kankuro Sabaku, Naruto announces. Scene break. Konoha rookies. Why did you and that freaky proctor kiss that Anbu, Kiba says. Kurenai looks at her student and the other rookies as Sasuke was taken by Kakashi. He's my fiancé and I share him with Anko, she explains. Share him? Ino says, incredulously. Asuma silently scoffs and looks to the fight as Masumi attempts to snap Kankuro's neck. He's under the CRA or clan restoration. This allows a single male member to marry multiple women to repopulate his clan, he explains, and here's the snap. However, none of you know it is someone your age, Asuma thought. Tenten was listening but shifts her gaze to Naruto and her thoughts drift to her dreams lately. No way you would go for me then, she thought. Masumi gasps as clay pieces fall to the ground and Kankuro turns his head 360 degrees to reveal a puppet face. A puppet? Masumi shouts. The wrapped parcel writhes as the real Kankuro emerges as the wraps its arms around Masumi until he passes out. Winner Kankuro Sabaku, Naruto declares. Kankuro smirks and picks his puppet. I hope that impressed you, Proctor, he says, but Naruto ignores him. Med Nin take Masumi as Naruto hears the rookies discussing Kankuro's skills. The next match is Shino Aburame vs Zaku Abumi, Naruto shouts. The pair make their way down as Zaku simply smirks but his face drifts to Naruto's mask, causing his breath to hitch. That's the same mask, Zaku thought, gnashing his teeth. Shino stands impassively as Zaku switches his gaze between him and Naruto. Both fighters ready. Begin, Naruto states, stepping back. You should retire given your injuries, Shino says. Zaku scoffs and raises his left arm with a smirk. I'm not as injured as you think, he shouts, pointing his left hand. Zenkaha, Zaku shouts, firing a concussive blast of sound air waves. Shino is engulfed and thrown end over end until he comes to a halt face down, shocking his teammates and fellow Konoha genin or some of them. However, as the smoke clears, Shino slowly rises to his feet with loud chittering noises. What? Zaku says, looking around. However, Zaku suddenly sees bugs emerging from points on Shino's body, bugs. They're bursting from inside his body. He thought, hey, what are you trying to pull? Zaku shouts but gasps and looks back to see more bugs coming from behind him. These insects are known as Kikaichu. They attack en masse and devour chakra, and with this amount, your loss is guaranteed, Shino says, and Zaku gnashes his teeth. If you attack me with your left, my Kikaichu attack you and vice versa as well, Shino says, and Zaku smirks, wrenching his right arm from his sling. Then how about I use both? Zaku shouts and points both arms at both Shino and his Kikaichu. He made you believe his right arm was useless and caught you off guard, Dosu thought. Zaku starts but his arms burst, at the forearms with blue chakra and shocking many watching. Zaku screams in pain but sees Kikaichu in the holes in his palms. I managed to sneak some onto you, Shino says, appearing behind him. Zaku attempts to attack but Shino connects with a back fist to his face, sending him flying back to the ground. Naruto approaches and sees the serious damage to Zaku's arms. Zaku is unable to continue. Winner is Shino Aburame, he declares. Med Nin come to pick up Zaku as Naruto listens to Guy explaining the Aburame clan to his students. Let's start the third match. It is Karen Uzumaki vs Sakura Haruno, Naruto declares. Sakura looks around for Sasuke to watch but he was still gone with Kakashi, while Karen makes her way down. Haruno, get down here or be disqualified, Naruto shouts. Sakura slowly comes down as Karen is waiting for her. I want Sasuke-kun to watch me, Sakura says. So you can't fight without him watching? Are you no different that Yamanaka are pretending to be a ninja? If you're not, begin, Naruto says, and Sakura glares at him. She then turns her attention to Karen. I bet if I beat her, Sasuke-kun will praise me, Sakura thought, reaching into her pack. Sakura fires a dozen shuriken towards Karen but the redhead draws a kunai to block them, with the remains hitting her gloves but doing her no harm. Sakura quickly rushes Karen and creates 3 clones to confuse her, not remembering Karen was a very adept censor. Sweden. Mizwame Nabara, Karen recites, after weaving signs and stopping a tiger. Karen spews a viscous amount of water onto the ground and Sakura steps right into it, catching her left leg to knock her forward. What is this? Sakura screeches, catching herself with her right hand but trapping her more. Sakura-san, we were training together for a month during our mission. Yet you still didn't even bother to change, Karen says and appears behind Sakura with her hands outstretched. Sweden. Suiro no Jutsu, Karen says, and the viscous water forms the water prison. Sakura struggles to hold her breath and quickly mouths her surrender, causing Karen to free her. Winner Karen Uzumaki, Naruto declares. Scene break. Kakashi appears with a puff of smoke as Med Nin helps Sakura from the arena floor. Oya, Sakura fought, he says. Yeah, and she lost to Uzumaki, Asuma comments. She showed quite youthful skill, Guy states, and Kakashi glances his way. You say something, Guy, Kakashi say, and Guy box, muttering about hip attitude. The rookies were also conversing among themselves. Your teammate is skilled, Shino comments. We will see if we ever fight, Hinata states and glances to Neji, as he stares but looks away. She didn't even graduate with us. How is she that strong? Ino says. She was taught by her cousin, Tenten says, shocking some of them. Who's her cousin? Choji asks. It's in her last name. Her cousin is Naruto, Shikamaru says. Kankuro walks up to their conversation. So who's this Naruto character? He asks and Kiba scoffs. He was the dead last of our year but disappeared 3 years ago and reappears a few months ago as a Chunin, Kiba says. Somehow, Ino says, chiming in. Naruto should be someone to strive for. Yes, he was the dead last but in 3 years improved enough to become a Chunin, Kurenai says, watching Naruto as the other proctors clean up Karen's jutsu. I bet I could beat him, Kiba says and Akamaru barks, causing Kurenai to internally roll her eyes. Naruto would rip you apart or Hana would do it for him, Kurenai thought. The next match is Tenten Higurashi vs Tamari Sabaku, Naruto interjects. The pair slowly make their way down to the arena floor. Watch me Naruto, Tenten thought. If that pink thing is any indication of Konoha Kunoichi, then I have nothing to worry about. Well, except for the Uzumaki or maybe the Hyuga, Tamari thought, hand on her hip. Do your best Tenten, Lee shouts, as Guy cheers with him. Alright, the next match begins, Naruto shouts. Tenten immediately widens the gap between them as Tamari remains still. What? Are you planning to make a move after I do? However, it will be too late for you to counter. Unlike you girls playing Kunoichi. I am the real thing, Tamari says and Tenten glares. She quickly leaps and tosses a half-dozen shuriken but Tamari brushes them aside by unknown means. They missed. No. You use futon, Tenten says and Tamari smirks. What if I do? Are you now scared? Tamari says, in a mocking tone. Calm down and don't let her rattle you, Tenten thought, measuring the distance between them. Tamari reaches for her fan but Tenten suddenly races around her into a leap with a scroll unfurling around the bun hair Kunoichi. Take this, Tenten shouts, as weapons burst from the scroll. Tamari moves almost completely unseen by Tenten as she lands with weapons scattered around. No way. Tenten shouts. Tamari holds her fan with a large purple circle visible. This is the first star. If you see the third star, then this match is over, she says. Don't give up Tenten, Lee shouts. Tenten closes her eyes to calm down. I know that Lee. I was saving this for the main fights but I have no choice but to use it, she thought, pulling out 2 scrolls. Naruto watches Tenten place both scrolls on the ground with her palms on them. Tamari is a bad opponent for you. Even using that coupled with your Raiden will fail, he thought. So Shoryu, Tenten shouts, creating a huge burst of smoke. The smoke rises to form 2 dragons but the smoke dispels to reveal the scrolls as Tenten leaps upward. Tenten unleashes an inordinate amount weapons but Tamari counters, opening her fan to the second star with a full spin and creating a vortex of wind. Tenten lands with her weapons littering the ground but she wasn't down as she backflips into the air with ninja string coming from her fingers to grasp her weapons. Raiden. Rensa Kaminari, Tenten shouts, sending Raiden through her strings and electrifying her weapons. Tamari is momentarily shocked but smirks and swings her fan, knocking the weapons and Tenten away with her landing on the ground with a skid. That was mildly impressive but futile against me, Tamari says, her fan now showing all 3 fans. Tenten gasps as Tamari vanishes and looks around. I'm right here, Tamari says, from behind her. Futon. Kameidachi no Jutsu, Tamari shouts, swinging her fan wide. Tenten gasps as she's hit by a vortex of wind that lifts her off the ground and cuts her from all sides. Tenten. Lee shouts. There is chakra embedded in that wind. Tenten won't be able to continue, Neji says. The wind dies down and Tenten falls towards the ground, only to land back first on Tamari's closed fan and it causes her to spit up blood. How boring. You can call it vampire, Tamari says. Winner. Tamari Sabaku, Naruto announces, approaching the pair. Tamari pushes Tenten off her fan but Naruto catches her. You've shown Kunoichi should be feared, he says. Of course. Perhaps you'll show me what's under that mask, Tamari asks. Naruto turns on his heels to hand Tenten over to the med nin. Sorry little squirrel. Only those who share my bed get to see my face, he says and Tamari scoffs, returning to the upper levels. We will now have a 10-minute break to clear the floor, Naruto shouts. Scene break. What do you think so far? Hiruzen says. Naruto pushes his mask into the shadows of his hood, before slipping a cigarette in and lights it. Our Kunoichi have showed poorly so far. Saved Karen and that's not showing much because she didn't go to the academy, Naruto replies. Hiruzen sighs with a look to the remaining genin. I would agree. I allowed the academy to change so much. Peace has changed us, he says. You can't help that. Peace has reigned and dull our swords slightly, Naruto muses. More like you could blame the civilian council. They made the academy easy so their kids could pass and those old fossils omitted anything that would deter them. Seduction. What we ninja really do. Blooding their hands, Anko says, taking Naruto's cigarette and taking a puff. How long will you keep them alive, old man? Naruto says and Hiruzen sighs. They are people I've known most of my life. It's not easy to make such a choice, Hiruzen says. That is why Sensei chose wrong. I've been able to work in the shadows because of your soft-hearted nature, a very familiar voice says. Hiruzen looks up with a cold look on his face. Don't do that, he says. Sorry Gramps, but he's sorta right. Danzo managed to keep his dark secrets because you were soft on him. Same with the snake. Hell Jiraiya too, Naruto says. I won't deny that, but, Hiruzen says and shakes his head. I get it, Naruto says and looks at Anko's watch. Well, let's continue on, he adds, vaulting the railing and landing with a crouch. Alright genin. The next match is Hinata Hyuga vs Yoroi Akado, Naruto shouts. Hinata calmly walks down as Yoroi does the same, the latter with an air of calm. Both fighters ready. Begin, Naruto declares. Hinata puts up a ram sign and her Byakugan activates, before she slips into her clan's Juken strike. Yoroi narrows his eyes and keeps on edge but Hinata bursts forward, forcing him to block her strikes and that was a failure. I can see you gathering chakra to hands but that is useless before my eyes, Hinata says. Yoroi jerks as Hinata unleashes a flurry of strikes, closing his tenketsu points with each and knocking him back. It's over. He won't get up, Hinata says but her breath hitches, seeing Naruto's chakra. Winner Hinata Hyuga, Naruto declares. Hinata slowly returns to the upper levels with hidden look of shock. Naruto, is this Kayaketsuki? She thought. Then why was he put on our team? He is an Anbu. Could father have? Hinata thought, looking to Naruto. The next match is Shikamaru Nara vs Kintsuchi, Naruto declares. Mendokusei, Shikamaru thought, making his way down. Begin, Naruto declares. Shikamaru starts with his shadow paralysis but Kin dodges and tosses two Senbon with bells attached. Bells, he thought, looking back. Classic tactics of using the bells to distract from the hidden Senbon, Shikamaru says and Kin smirks, tossing more as Shikamaru dodges. However, Shikamaru freezes as the bells sound and he looks only to see the Senbon in the wall, also strings attacked. Too late, Kin says, catching Shikamaru with two Senbon. He pulls them out of his arms but freezes as his vision starts to blur. What's this? Shikamaru says, collapsing to his knees. Ha ha ha. That's what happens to those who hear my bells. The sound vibration emitted by these special bells directly attacks the brain from the eardrum and causing one to hallucinate, Kin says and Shikamaru covers his ears. It's useless. You can't escape this, she adds, as multiple versions of her appear. Damn it. Which is the real one? Shikamaru thought but cries out as Senbon pierce his arms and shoulder. Kin was about to toss more Senbon but her body seizes and slowly moves. What? She says. Shikamaru slowly gets to his feet, Kujmain no Jutsu success, he says. How? Kin says. Shikamaru smirks slightly and looks to her string, causing Kin to gasp as the shadow expand. Shikamaru raises his right hand and Kin does the same as they toss shurikens. However, as Shikamaru ducks back, Kin slams her head into the wall and knocks herself out. Winner by knockout. Shikamaru Nara. Naruto says, checking on Kin. Let's see, all that is left is me. That sand guy. Choji. Lee. Neji and that sound guy, Kiba thought. The next match is Kiba Inuzuka versus Dosu Kinyuda, Naruto declares. Yes. It's our turn, Kiba crows and Akamaru barks. Dosu smirks as he makes his way down. This won't take too long, he thought. Kiba pulls Akamaru out his coat as Dosu stands with a hunched stance. Begin, Naruto shouts. Kiba lowers his stance with a smirk. Let's go Akamaru, he shouts. Beast mimicry. All fours jutsu, Kiba shouts, as his features become more feral. Kiba launches forward to Dosu, but he swings his melody arm to block Kiba's strike, causing him to grin at the feral boy. Bad move, Dosu says and channels his chakra. Kiba jerks and leaps as surge of sound erupts, knocking him back with a skid, but his legs give out. Dosu quickly rushes towards Kiba as he recovers and hits him in the head with his melody arm, causing Kiba's eyes to whiten, blood come from his ears. Akamaru rushes to Kiba's side as Dosu chuckles. Call it, he says. Kiba is unable to continue. Winner Dosu Kinyuda, Naruto declares. Kiba rushed in without thinking, Kurenai says. What an idiot, Ino says. Big talk from someone who didn't ever fight, Hinata comments, as Med Nin quickly rushed to check on Kiba. Oh man, there are strong people left, Choji whispers. The next match is Choji Akamichi versus Neji Hyuga, Naruto declares, and Choji freezes, looking to the former Rookie of the Year. I forfeit, Choji shouts, shocking his teammates. HMPH, he's smarter than he looks, Neji comments. Naruto sighs, but he could see Choji's reasoning. Alright. The final match is Rock Lee vs Gaara Sabaku, he declares. Yush, it's my turn, Lee roars, with fire in his eyes. Gaara stares blankly and makes his way down via sand shunshin as Lee rushes down. Fighters ready, Naruto shouts and calls for them to begin. Lee slips into Goken stance but suddenly catches Gaara's cork. Quite rude, he says. Lee drops the cork and rushes towards Gaara with a leap into a spin. Konoha Senpu, he shouts, connecting with a kick but to a wall of sand. Lee lands and quickly backpedals as the sand attempts to capture him along the ground. The sand almost seems alive, Lee thought. He rushes towards Gaara once again with a series of punches and kicks, but the sand reacts to each of his strikes, forcing him to bring out a kunai to swipe at the sand. The sand continues to follow Lee as he dodges, forcing him to leap upward and toss several shuriken, but the sand reacts and blocks as Lee lands. Entertain me more, Lee hears and narrows his eyes. This is not enough. I need more blood, Gaara says, as the sand rushes towards Lee and grabs him as he leaps. Lee grunts as he hits a wall from being thrown by the sand and quickly dodges more of it. This is like Tenten's battle. Gaara is wrong type of opponent for Lee. He can't use ninjutsu, Naruto thought, but glances to Guy, but I'm sure Guy taught him that, he thought. Lee lands on the stone hands with a serious look on his face. This will be very tough, he thought. Lee, take them off, Guy shouts. Lee looks to his sensei with wide eyes, but you said to only do that if I needed to protect many people, he says, and Guy gives him the thumbs up. Lee smiles and rolls down his leg warmers to reveal leg weights. Yush, I will be able so much more freely, he says, rising up. You think taking off some weights will help? Tamari thought, but gawks, as the weights shattering the ground with a big dust-up. Everyone but Naruto were in complete shock at the display. Now that is too much, Naruto thought. Go Lee, Guy shouts and Lee vanishes. Gaara gasps as Lee appears in front of him with a right through his sand, but Lee vanishes again, blitzing him from all sides as the sand can't keep up. Tamari and Kankuro gasp as Gaara struck in his cheek, before being blitzed again and knocked away. This is bad, Tamari thought. Gaara slowly rises to his feet as sand continues to pool around him, but Lee gasps as sand falls from the redhead's face, revealing a wide and sadistic grin. So he covered himself in sand as armor, Naruto thought. Lee loosens the bandages around his hands, before vanishing and kicking Gaara upwards with a series of kicks. Impressive, many thought. Lee winces in pain as Gaara's armor breaks and wraps him in his bandages, then grabs him into a spin towards the ground. Omid Renge, Lee shouts, crashing them into the ground and creating medium-sized spider web crack. Lee leaps out of the smoke as it clears to reveal Gaara laying motionless. I got him, he says. Naruto approaches but smirks as Gaara breaks down into sand, causing the Konoha genin to gasp in shock. The sand rises behind Lee to reveal Gaara with a dark laugh as the sand rises and attacks Lee, knocking him around several times. Lee's nearly at his limit. I wonder if he'll use it, Naruto thought, and could Guy explaining things to the genin. Gaara licks his lips with a sinister look on his face as Lee continues to dodge with heavy breathing. Such meaningless movements, Gaara sneers, sending his sand and Lee driving Lee into the floor. The sand forms a fist, but suddenly Lee starts to dodge Gaara's attack once again, causing Naruto to smirk behind his mask. So he did teach you that, Naruto thought, and here Lee can open 5 gates. You fufufu, show me your metal rock, Lee, he thought. Music. Need to be strong, Naruto asked. Lee crosses his arms over his chest as the air seems to heat up around him as his skin turns red and blue chakra wafts off his body. Hachiman, Simon. Kai, Lee thought, the ground cracking up him. Lee's pupils are no longer visible as the ground cracks further and pieces lift off the ground, but he lowers his stance. Hachiman, Shoman. Kai, he thought. Naruto activates his Sharingan as Lee launches forward, shattering the ground in his wake and kicking Gaara in the chin. The air around them is violently disturbed as dust rises in a forming cloud, while Gaara emerges above with his sand armor cracking more and more. Where's Lee? Ino shouts. Lee appears above Gaara with a punch and creates a small shockwave, before appear behind with another minor shockwaves. Lee blitzes Gaara from all sides using the walls and ceiling as springboards to attack him. What? My sand armor is being torn away, Gaara thought, pinballing between Lee's attack. Naruto narrows his eyes as he could hear Lee's muscles being torn with every movement. Fool to go this far, he thought. Hachiman. Toman. Kai, Lee thought, opening the 5th gate as blood runs down his nose. Gaara's eyes were wide as Lee closes in on him. Impossible to defend myself. Is he human? He thought. Lee vanishes and connects with a blow to Gaara's stomach, sending him plummeting to the arena floor, but he nearly folds backwards as Lee pulls him back with his bandages. Watch me, Neji. I was saving this for you. See it now and what's to come, Lee thought. Ura Renge. Lee roars, connecting with a punch and kick. The ground buckles as both land with a kick up of dust and debris, causing everyone to cover their eyes. The dust cloud slowly dissipates with Lee not far away from Gaara, who was laying on a bed of sand. Gaara reaches out his hand slowly with gritted teeth as the sand moves, causing Lee to attempt to move, but his body is racked with pain. The sand creeps closer and closer as Lee tries to move. I forfeit, Lee shouts. Song ends. Scene break. Gaara ignores Lee's pleas and continues forward with his sand, but Naruto appears in the path. The match is over. Enough, Naruto says. Gaara slowly rises to his feet with a blank look. Not until I kill him, he hisses. Did you not hear my rules earlier? If I call the match, it's over, but if you break that rule, Naruto says and starts leaking his ki. Gaara clutches his head as a voice screams for him to kill Naruto, but their sensei Baki appears behind Gaara. Enough, Gaara, he says. You should keep your genin on a leash, Naruto says and clear his throat. The preliminaries are now over. All winning genin come down, he adds. Anko and Ibiki approach Naruto to stand on each side of him as Hiruzen stands behind them. Congratulations on passing to the final round of the Chunin exams. I turn things back to Lord Third and return to the shadows. Do well to entertain us, Naruto says, vanishing before their eyes. As Kayaketsuki said, I will now explain the rules for the third and final round of the Chunin exams, Hiruzen states. Scene break. Tenten slowly opens her eyes but groans in pain. Where am I? She whispers, looking around but remembers her defeat at Temari's hand. Temari was a bad opponent for you, a voice muses. Tenten slowly sits up with a groan to see Naruto appearing out of the shadows, with his Anbu mask on but he removes it. What did I miss? Tenten asks. Neji got a forfeit win to Choji and Lee lost to Gaara. Naruto replies and takes a seat. Lee even used the gates and ripped his muscles but still lost. Like you a bad opponent, he adds. Tenten grits her teeth and sighs. Guy-sensei must be upset about Lee, she whispers. He is. Lee tore himself apart and will be out of commission for a long time, Naruto says. Tenten looks at the bandages on her body but then to Naruto. So what will you do now? He asks. I don't know, Tenten says. Perhaps bite the forbidden apple, Naruto says, waving his hand and now holding an apple. Forbidden apple? Tenten questions. Naruto takes a slow bite of the apple. Do you remember the conversation we had at your parents' shop about my bloodline? He says, after swallowing. I didn't say anything, Tenten says and Naruto grins. But you thought it, and yes, my bloodline can be passed to others. In fact, I've passed it on to 4 people, Naruto says and Tenten narrows her eyes. That Proctor and Kurenai sensei, Tenten says and Naruto eye smiles. Also Kiba's older sister and an Anbu named Neko. The 4 of them knew my mother, Naruto explains and Tenten gasps, as the white of Naruto's eyes bleed black. His blue eyes start to glow and Naruto opens his mouth to show 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth. I'm no longer human panda. I am a creature that haunts the dreams of men. I've become the demon the matrons used to call me. However, I gained power as the no-life duke bestowed upon me by the man who gave the last of his life to me, he says. Tenten stares at Naruto with flickering dark eyes and the blonde simply eye smiles once again. I also know about the dreams, he says and her breath hitches. My queens have been haunting your dreams and guiding you towards this conclusion. Where you would possibly ask that question. I don't fault them for it, but I prefer not force someone into this, Naruto says and pauses to look her in the eye. If you take the forbidden apple, you would gain power but you could no longer remain a part of Team Guy. You couldn't stay with your parents. You would see them. Guy, Lee and Neji is your next meal, Naruto adds. The room soon devolves into silence with only Tenten's breathing for ambience. She starts but Naruto covers her mouth with his right hand. Take the month. Do not take this forbidden apple thoughtlessly. Put aside the dreams. Put aside the words. If that is your desire to have real power, Naruto says and pulls his hand, rising to his feet. Naruto bites the apple once again as he back into shadows as it accents his glowing blue eyes. Will you live as a human or live as a monster? He says, vanishing into the shadows and leaving Tenten alone. Hiruzen sits at his desk with his ancient enemy before him. It has been just under a week since the end of the second round of the exams. 3 genin from Suna, 1 from Oto and 6 from our own, Hiruzen thought. Yo sensei, a voice crows and Hiruzen looks to the window to see his student Jiraiya the gallant. Oh Jiraiya, good to see you my boy, Hiruzen says but was dreading this meeting. The white hair man steps through the window as his Geta sandals clack on the floor. So what brings you here Jiraiya? Hiruzen asks. Well, the Chunin exams are here and I needed to do some research. Plus I could maybe teach Naruto something. He's in the exams right, Jiraiya says and Hiruzen sighs but shakes his head. So he didn't pass. Oh well, there's next time, but Minato passed on his first try, Jiraiya comments. No. Naruto-kun wasn't in the exams, Hiruzen says and Jiraiya was confused. He didn't even graduate, Jiraiya says and Hiruzen sighs, rubbing his forehead. Neko. Fetch Kayaketsuki, Hiruzen says and Neko appears, before vanishing with Leaf Shunshin. Jiraiya cups his chin in thought at the name, Kayaketsuki. I've heard of that name from my network. Took care of several large bandit camps in Earth Country, he says. Indeed, Hiruzen replies. A few minutes pass as Hiruzen lights his pipe. You called for me, Lord Third, a voice croons. Jiraiya looks around as Naruto appears behind him. I see the shameless one has come, Naruto says, disguising his voice. Jiraiya meet Kayaketsuki, otherwise known as your godson, Hiruzen says, and Jiraiya's breath hitches, whipping around. Naruto removes his Anbu mask with a blank look on his face as Jiraiya turns back to Hiruzen. Anbu. Why is he an Anbu? Jiraiya says. Why do you care? You've never cared before, Naruto says. Look kid, I know I haven't been there, but I needed to maintain our spy network, Jiraiya says, but notices how pale Naruto is. So you were more concerned with outside threats than your own godson. Ah, the adage village before all, Naruto muses, reaching in his coat for his cigarette case. If you're in Anbu, you know what's out there, Jiraiya says. Naruto lights his cigarette with a small drag. I do. I've been in Anbu 3 years, but not really by choice, he says. Not by choice, Jiraiya says. Hiruzen leans back in his chair and taps his desk with a pulse of chakra to cause the remaining Anbu to leave. Jiraiya, an incident happened 3 years ago. Several ninja and civilians attempted to kill him, he starts. One of the Jonin used a Doden jutsu and opened a hole to an underground cavern. Inside was being from an era long pass. That being offered me power and I took it, Naruto continues, and Hiruzen frowns. You just took some unknown power. When you didn't know what it would do, Jiraiya says. You're right, but I was desperate. I've been treated as less than human all my life. I was kicked out the orphanage at 6 and constantly harassed by the village as a whole. So in a moment of weakness I took it and became what stands before you. The No-Life Duke, Naruto explains. No life? Jiraiya questions. It's a title. Naruto-kun is a being known as a vampire. It's a new bloodline. It gives him paler skin. Fanged canines in a hunger for blood, Hiruzen says. Naruto sighs and makes his way to the window, to keep me from killing anyone due to my new bloodline. He placed me in Anbu to feed my hunger and I climbed the ranks to captain, he says. Jiraiya didn't know what to think and took a seat in a chair. How could this happen? The prophecy, he says. What prophecy? Naruto says, and Jiraiya looks to the blonde. The toads told me a prophecy that a student I taught would change the shinobi world, Jiraiya says, and Naruto growls. So you taught my father and thought he was this child of prophecy, but he died. So you moved to me, but instead of raising me or having someone do it, you left me to the demons of this village. Then you appear before me and dangle the chance to be the student of the great Jiraiya who taught Lord Fourth and who himself was a student of Lord Third, Naruto states. Pain builds character. I know you were dealt a shitty hand and I left you, but things happen, Jiraiya says. Yeah, things do, Naruto says and heads for the window. Wait, Naruto, I want take you as my apprentice and have you sign the Toad contract as well. Even teach you use the Kyuubi's chakra, Jiraiya says. Have you ever trained a Jinchuriki? Naruto says, and Jiraiya shakes his head. Then how could you teach me how? I don't need to use the Kyuubi's power anyway. Toad contract. I'll pass in the same for apprenticeship, Naruto adds. I can teach you your father's famed jutsu, Jiraiya says, but gasps as Naruto forms a Rasengan in his right hand. This one, or you mean the Hiraishin? Naruto says. Jiraiya internally gnashes his teeth with a shake of his head. I can prepare you for what's to come, he says, and Naruto furrows his brow. There is an organization hunting Jinchuriki. Orochimaru was a member. They're called Akatsuki. Every member is S-class and you need me to train you, Jiraiya says. Naruto reaches in his coat and tosses a pair of pictures into Jiraiya's lap. Akatsuki. Interesting choice of words, he says, giving another pair to Hiruzen. Who are they people? Hiruzen asks but notices the shocked look on Jiraiya's face. Jiraiya, Hiruzen says. Where did you get this? When? Jiraiya says. Naruto taps his ashes out the window. Danzo was in secret communication with Hanzo the salamander, but that stopped some years ago. However, due to Hanzo's paranoia, he closed off a Megacure after the Third War, and that allowed certain things to happen, he says. What things? Hiruzen asks. A civil war with those two being the winners. The man is called Pain and the woman is, Naruto says. Conan. Jiraiya interjects. How do you know that, Jiraiya? Hiruzen says. Jiraiya looks at the two pictures with a sigh. Do you remember the 3 orphans I took in for a while? He says, and Hiruzen nods. Their names were Conan, Yahiko and Nagato. I spent time and trained each of them, but Nagato was most unique. He possessed the Rinnegan. Jiraiya starts. The eyes of the Sage of Six Paths, Hiruzen says, and Jiraiya nods. I instilled in them my ideals and trained them until they could take care of themselves, Jiraiya continues. If that is true, why didn't you bring them back to Konoha? If this Nagato had the Rinnegan, maybe he could have helped with the Kyuubi attack, Naruto says, slightly pissed off. I don't know. They wanted to liberate their country. I couldn't fault them. Then I heard news they were killed and I moved on, Jiraiya says, and Naruto scoffs, shaking his head. Then obviously not, Naruto says. True, but why does Yahiko have Nagato's Rinnegan? Jiraiya says. I don't know. My clones dispelled after getting their looks. What does Nagato look like? Naruto says. Red hair and the Rinnegan eyes, Jiraiya replies. Shadows cover Naruto's face with gritted teeth, so. Not only did you train someone with a famed dojutsu, but he could have also have been one of my clan, Naruto says, but bursts into a murder of crows, out the window. Hiruzen sighs and rubs his forehead. Jiraiya, it would be best if you leave Naruto-kun alone for now, he says, and explains things, before his student could protest. Scene break. Anbu HQ. You can't just hide out here, Dragon says, and Naruto sighs. Besides, wouldn't this be the first place he'd check? Dragon adds. Good point, Naruto says, and crosses his legs. Dragon looks the blonde over and sees he is still tense. He pissed you off, Dragon says. The gall of that man. He waltzes in and says. Sorry kid, I wasn't there, but hey, become my student, Naruto says. He's concerned with image. He was the dead last of his batch and is doing everything to show up others. Orochimaru is a traitor and Tsunade Senju has not been seen in years, Dragon states. Naruto scoffs and rises to his feet with a sigh. True, he says. Aren't you training your cousin? Dragon asks, and Naruto shakes his head. Anko and Kurenai are helping, Naruto replies, leaving Dragon's office. Naruto leaves Anbu HQ and he vanishes, appearing near the Golden Lead Hotel, but his form of a beautiful woman with long black hair, dressed in a fitted white 3-piece suit. Naruto heads to the penthouse room of the hotel and knocks, before it opens to reveal a young woman of about 16 with white hair and dark green eyes. She wears a white cloak with a uniform similar to Sai underneath and the right sleeve missing on the cloak. Naruto follows her in and Victoria sits at table with an identical girl to the one who opened the door with black hair, but she wears a black cloak and the left sleeve missing. Have Shiro and Kuro been guarding you well? Naruto says, returning to normal. Victoria nods with a glance to two Nei agents. Yes, and they are teaching me enough to defend myself, she says, opening a briefcase. Naruto takes a seat across from Victoria and reads over the documents. Any issues with Gato's associates? He asks. No, Naruto-sama. Kuro and I dealt with them when they appeared, Shiro says, and Naruto nods. Good. Victoria, I want you to network during the Chunin finals. Also, I want you go to the various casinos in Fire Country and buy the debts of Tsunade Senju, Naruto says, signing some papers. In what regard? Victoria asks. Tsunade is a notorious gambler and has terrible luck. Plus she's renowned medic. If I control her debts I can convince her to aid Karen in the future, Naruto muses. Lady Senju is known for her temper, Kuro says. I know that, but she loves gambling more. Set up a tournament in Tanzaku Gai. She'll be nose open and won't be able to stay away, Naruto states, and Victoria nods, slipping the documents back into the briefcase. Naruto rises from his chair and takes his female persona. Remember to call me Yukiko Kiryu in this form, Naruto says, and all three of them nod, bowing at the waist. Naruto leaves the hotel and could see men looking with lust in their eyes, as he makes his way to Ichiraku Ramen. Hello and welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, Ayame says. Naruto takes a seat and crosses his legs. Hello. I would like to have large miso ramen with extra fish cake please, he says. Of course. Dad, one miso and extra Naruto, Ayame shouts, and Naruto internally makes a face. Quaint shop, Naruto says. Ayame smiles as she wipes the counter. Yeah, it's been in our family for a while, she replies. Do you think of expanding more customers to experience such a heavenly food? Naruto says. We haven't thought about. I'm content with my little shop, Tsuki says, handing Naruto the bowl. The disguised blonde eats his meal with a content look and pulls a card with some money. If you think about expanding, look me up, Naruto says, and leaves the shop. Naruto finds an alley to slip in and return to normal, before going back to Ichiraku and ordering more 10 bowls. Scene break. Tenten stares the ceiling of her bedroom and looks at her clock that reads 7 in the morning. The bun-hair Kunoichi gets up and takes a shower, before staring at herself in the mirror. Her conversation with Naruto has plagued her thoughts over the past 2 weeks. Could she sacrifice everything she knew for power? Tenten dressed herself a pink sleeveless kipao-style blouse with red sleeve trimmings and yellow fastening buttons, along with dark green pants. Morning Ten-chan, Natsuko says, making breakfast. Morning mom, Tenten says and sighs. Something wrong dear? Natsuko asks and Tenten looks up. It's nothing. Just thinking about the exams, Tenten replies. You did your best, Natsuko says, and Tenten frowns. Jinbo comes down with a loud yawn. Morning you too, he says, and both say morning. Dad, what would you think of me if I took an easy way to gain power? Tenten says, out of the blue. What do you mean Ten-chan? Natsuko asks. Tenten sighs and looks her parents in the eye. My dream is be a kunoichi the likes of Lady Tsunade, and I have a way to do that, but the cost is big, she says. How big? Jinbo asks. Enough that I wouldn't be me anymore. I would be someone or something else, Tenten says. What does that mean? Jinbo states. Tenten clutches her forehead with her head down. Do you remember that Anbu who saved my team? She says, and both nod. Well, he came to see after the exams. He offered me a chance in the corp, Tenten says. I know a few ninja and I don't think those in the corp are inhuman, Jinbo says. Tenten slowly nods as Natsuko places breakfast on the table. Not like I can tell them that Naruto wants me to become a vampire, she thought. The family eat breakfast with normal small talk. I'm going to check out the competition, Tenten says, and her parents nod. Tenten excuses herself and slips on some blue sandals to make her way through the village. I should get a perspective from the source, Tenten thought, making her way to Naruto's apartment. The village was bustling with activity as everyone were preparing for the Chunin finals and the important guests that would entail. Tenten soon arrives at the complex just as Karen was making her way out with Anko and Kurenai. Heya Panda, Anko says, and Tenten gives her a slow nod. Can I talk to the two of you? Tenten asks, and the pair of vampires look between each other, before creating shadow clones of themselves. We'll catch up Karen, Anko says, and Karen nods. That's fine. See you later Tenten, Karen says, and Tenten waves, turning her attention back to the pair. Can we talk in private? Tenten says. Sure. Hana's the only one home, Anko says, and Tenten follows them. Kurenai unlocks the door and invites Tenten inside. What is this about? Kurenai asks. Hana looks up from her book to see the others and Tenten. What's up? Hana asks, but Anko shrugs her shoulders. Tenten pockets her hands and looks the three vampires over. Naruto offered to turn me and he knows about the dreams you all gave me, she says. Do you care about Naruto? Kurenai says, sitting on the sofa next to Hana. We knew each other at the orphanage and we were good friends. Everyone called him some monster, but I didn't believe it. I even cried when he was kicked out the orphanage, but we lost touch, Tenten says. Then seeing him again and saving you ignited something, Hana says, but Tenten shakes her head in doubt. I didn't even know it was him, but I recognized his sun-kissed hair. So I hounded Gai-sensei and he asked the Sandaime, and I learned that Kayaketsuki were and Naruto were one in the same. However, it wasn't him but the weapon he carried, Tenten states. But the dreams changed things, Anko says, causing Tenten to slightly blush. Only because you all gave me dreams of us having, Tenten says, nearly shouting. Hana and Anko giggle as Kurenai sighs, true, but it's because we want to help Naruto. You are a precious person to him, Kurenai says. But to give up being human because I'm precious to Naruto, Tenten says. We're still human. It is just we need blood to survive. We've retrained our bodies to eat normal foods again, but we get no nourishment from it, Anko says. We can function during daylight but still have to sleep, Kurenai comments. Is it that you would hate to outlive your parents? I know I'll outlive my mom and brother, but I have a plan for that. When my mom is on her deathbed, I'll drink from her and she'll live on in me, Hana says, and Tenten takes a sharp breath. Answer me this. Why did you decide to do this? Tenten asks. The three look between each other. Naruto is the last link to our sensei Kushina Uzumaki. She asked us to protect him as best we could. Becoming like this is an extension of doing that, Kurenai says. I met him as this cute like blonde with a small fox in arms. Begging for someone to help. I did and we became friends, but my idiot brother ruined it, Hana says. Anko and I met him after his first day at the academy. A group of ninja attacked him and we stepped in. We stayed with him until he awoke, Kurenai says, rubbing her eyes at the memory. Because of our love for Kushina-sama. We love Naruto as well, Yugao says, standing behind Tenten. If you're afraid Naruto won't accept you. Don't be, Naruto will accept you, Kurenai says and raises a ram sign. Tenten gasps as she saw herself walking arm in arm with Naruto, then their wedding day, and finally her holding a baby with brown hair and haunting blue eyes. That could be a possible future, Kurenai says, dropping her genjutsu. Tenten stays stock still, but her eyes were flickering. I need to go, she says and leaves. Think she'll take the fall, Anko says. We will see. We will see, Kurenai says. Scene break. Konoha General. Gaara stares at the sleeping Lee and clutches his head as images flood his mind, from Naruto stopping him from killing Lee or people of his past. The cork of his gourd lands on the ground as sand starts to leak out as the redhead grits his teeth in pain. The sand starts to creep out and makes its way towards Lee, ready to crush him into nothingness as Gaara holds out his hand. Close that hand and be prepared to lose it, a voice says. Gaara freezes and looks back to see Naruto with his hood obscuring his face. You, Gaara hisses, as the sand moves from Lee. Naruto closes the gap and grabs Gaara by the face, before they vanish with Shunshin. The pair appear near the forest of death as Naruto brushes Gaara back and dodges his sand. You're no match for me, Kyodai, Naruto says, his eyes glowing in his hood. Gaara gnashes his teeth as his eyes flicker. Why did you stop me? He hisses. Because I felt like it, Kyodai. You're in my domain and no one dies unless I allow it, Naruto says, leaking his ki. Mother wants your blood. I will feed you to her, Gaara hisses, as his sand slinks forward. Naruto's chains burst from his back and ensnare Gaara, shocking the red head as the blonde stalks forward. Calm yourself, Kyodai. No need to bring out Shukaku, Naruto says and Gaara's breath hitches. That's right. I know about the monster inside. Because I have a monster inside me too and it has 9 tails, Naruto says, now inches from Gaara's face. He could hear Shukaku screaming for him to kill Naruto, but his body wouldn't move. I will not let you destroy my existence. I will kill anyone who tries, Gaara hisses, with a wild look on his face, and Naruto throws his head back for a laugh. Ha 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 ha. Excellent, Kyodai. I'm tempted to ask the Hokage to demote me so I can face you in the finals, Naruto howls, letting Gaara go and vanishing. See you later, Kyodai. I look forward to the day I rip you apart and drink your soul, Naruto says on the wind. Gaara clutches his head and vanishes with Sand Shunshin, to find his siblings. Scene break. Naruto lands behind Hiruzen on a stone pillar as a group of children look up at him along with Iruka. Who are you? Konohamaru shouts. Naruto grabs the sides of his coat for a curtsy. I am Kayaketsuki and Lord Third's shadow, he says. Shadow? One girl says. Hiruzen smiles with his pipe in his hand and nods, yes. Kayaketsuki is one of the many shadows that protects our home. Now then, Iruka, continue on with your class, he says and leaves, with Naruto following him. Hayate Gecko was found dead this morning, Hiruzen says, once they were out of earshot of the children. Orochimaru? Naruto asks. We do not know at the moment, but I have all the Jonin on guard, Hiruzen replies. Naruto sighs internally with a look to the sky. Yugao will be sad. Hayate was a friend, he muses. Indeed. I want you prepared as well, Hiruzen says and Naruto nods. Where's Jiraiya? Naruto asks. Research. Naruto, you can't avoid him, Hiruzen replies and Naruto scoffs, as they reach Hiruzen's office. I can and will. Give him a taste of his own medicine, Naruto says and Hiruzen sighs. I won't get in the middle of this, but I urge you to talk to him, Hiruzen says and clears his throat. Now I've decided not to announce your status to the village as a whole, he says. That's actually fine. Let the councils do it. I'm sure you'll tell the daimyo, Naruto says and Hiruzen nods. I'm sorry about this, Naruto-kun, Hiruzen says and Naruto waves his hand. I'm fine with it. This village didn't deserve my parents or me as their son, Naruto says and hides himself in Hiruzen's shadow. This is how I will guard you for the finals, Naruto says. That is perfectly fine, Naruto-kun, Hiruzen says and starts on his paperwork. 2 weeks later, Chunin Finals Stadium. Hiruzen sits in one of two chairs on the highest level of the stadium as many people cheer, but his gaze was on the finalists. As Sasuke is still missing Rato, he asks. Several Anbu team are searching, but he has yet to be located, Rato says. He has a wheel-like scar on his face, running across the bridge of his nose and down across the left side of his face, with spiky brown hair and dark eyes. He may have fallen to Orochimaru, Rato says and Hiruzen slowly nods. Footsteps catch their ears as the Kazekage Rasa approaches with two nondescript guards, wearing tan cloaks. It's good to see you, Lord Hokage, Rasa says, taking his seat. You must be tired from your long trip, Hiruzen says. Not at all. I'm glad the exams were held in Konoha. Although you are still so young. It would be tiring to travel to another village, Rasa replies and pauses. Perhaps it is time to choose a godime, Rasa adds and Rato's eyes narrow, but Hiruzen laughs. Now don't treat me like a old man. I think I have a good 5 years left, Hiruzen says and rises from his seat, moving to the railing. Hiruzen channels chakra to his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to Konoha's Chunin selection exam. We will not begin the main matches with these 8 that have passed the preliminaries. Please enjoy, he declares and people cheer. 8. Were there not 10? Rasa says, but Hiruzen remains quiet. Hiruzen returns to his seat as Neji and Shino remain on the field. Let's watch the battles in earnest, he says. Scene break. Neji versus Shino. Alright, you two. The rules of the previous round applies, but death is not allowed, Genma says and both nod. Neji shifts into his Juken stance as Shino raises his arms to his mid-chest as his Kikaichu emerge from his sleeves. The Byakugan comes to bear as Neji edges closer. It would be wise to give up, Neji says. Shino sends his Kikaichu forth towards Neji, but he suddenly starts to spin with a dome of chakra. He knows the Hakusho Kaden, Hiashi thought. So you know main house techniques, Neji, Hinata thought. Neji comes to halt, but Shino closes the gap with a kunai in reverse grip, but Neji blocks with his right hand, brushing Shino's hand away. Shino grunts as Neji connects with 2 strikes to his right shoulder and left side as he leaps back. You're still in my field of divination, Neji says and shifts into a stance, shocking the main Hyuga member. Hake Rokujuyan Sho, Neji utters, closing the gap and striking Shino 64 times. Shino staggers back as Neji smirks, but his breath hitches as Shino breaks down into his insects. Your arrogance is your defeat, Shino says, appearing behind and sending a swarm of his Kikaichu to engulf Neji, but he counters with his strikes again in rapid speed, into another Kaden and cut down more of his hive. Shino narrows his eyes but lowers his hands. Proctor, I will have forfeit. I cannot afford to lose more of my Kikaichu, he says. Genma waves his hands and raises his left, winner by forfeit. Neji Hyuga, he declares. Neji smirks and looks to the crowd and sees Hinata. Just you wait. I will crush you, Hinata-sama, he thought. My arrogance was your defeat, Neji says. Shino and Neji make their way off the stadium floor as Genma clears his throat. The next match is Sasuke Uchiha vs Gaara Sabaku, Genma declares. 5 minutes pass, then 10 minutes, as many in the crowd were getting very restless. Oi, start the match. Where is he? We want to see this fight. Several shout. We'll have no choice to but disqualify, Hiruzen says. Wait, Lord Hokage. Many came to see Sasuke do battle. Myself included. Perhaps we can move the match, Rasa says, and Rado protests. Hiruzen tips his cage hat down slightly. Very well. We'll postpone the match, but Sasuke will be barred from becoming a Chunin for at least 1 year, he says, and Rado nods, relaying things to Genma. It's rare for you to say something, Lord Cage, Hiruzen says. I can think of no better opponent for Gaara than the Uchiha. What better way to show my country's power to the feudal lords, Rasa says. Ladies and gentlemen, Sasuke Uchiha has yet to arrive and the match will be delayed. So we will begin the next match, Genma declares, shocking the genin. So he gets his match delayed, Karen says, adjusting her glasses. Looks like it is, Shikamaru comments, with a mutter of troublesome. Lucky bastard, Kiba comments. The next match is Karen Uzumaki vs Kankuro Sabaku, Genma declares, and Kankuro TSKS. I can't show off my skills before the operation, Kankuro thought and glances to Tamari, as she nods. Proctor. I forfeit, Kankuro shouts, causing many people to boo. Genma sighs with a chew on his senbon. Karen Uzumaki wins by default. We'll begin the next match, he shouts. Tamari pulls out her fan and swings it open with a gust of wind to glide down to the stadium floor. Shikamaru was ready to give up himself, but someone kicks him over the railing, that person being Naruto. Get to it, lazy bones, Naruto shouts. Shikamaru stares at the smirking Naruto, but it pops, revealing itself as a clone. How troublesome, he thought. Numerous people boo and throw things as Shikamaru lays there. If you won't attack, then I will, Tamari shouts and races forward with her fan folded up. Shikamaru sighs and mutters as he grabs 2 kunai as Tamari is on him with her fan coming down with a medium-sized dust-up. The cloud dispels and Shikamaru is not there but standing above her fan on his kunai. It's not like I want to be promoted, he says. Tamari swings her fan with another dust-up, but Shikamaru is gone once again, hiding himself amongst the trees. He uses the shadows. So he'll try to lure me into it, but that won't save him, Tamari thought. Futon. Komedachi, Tamari shouts, swinging her fan. Shikamaru cover his face as the gale whips through up to the stands, causing Tenten to have flashbacks. That's the same jutsu she used to bat my weapons away with ease, Tenten thought. Shikamaru attempts to use his Kajimane no jutsu, but the shadow user comes up short as Tamari measures the distance. That's his limit with the shadows of the wall, 15 meters and 32 centimeters, Tamari thought, gouging the ground. This match is over. Tamari is better at long range than close combat, but she measured the distance. His options are limited, Kankuro thought. A standoff starts as Shikamaru devises a plan, but Tamari attacks with her Komedachi, forcing Shikamaru to maneuver around and toss a kunai to catch her off guards. Tamari dodges and Shikamaru uses his shadow imitation to attempt to trap her and she dodges but the shadow follows. Tamari above, Kankuro shouts. Tamari gasps and looks to see Shikamaru's jacket tied like a balloon and creating a shadow, allowing his jutsu to stretch. If Kankuro hadn't shouted I would have been caught, Tamari thought, as the balloon falls to the ground. Shikamaru looks up at the clouds moving, just a little more, he thought. I won't let you stall, Tamari shouts, firing her Komedachi once again. Shikamaru dodges behind a tree as it is carved up, she's right. I can only stall so much, he thought but sees the clouds bunching up. There, Shikamaru thought and shoots out to send his shadow. Tamari opens her fan wide and drives it into the ground to prepare an attack as the clouds move but her body suddenly freezes, no. He used the clouds, she thought. Shikamaru moves out the shadows as Tamari does the same as they approach one another. Looks like the clouds were on my side, Shikamaru says and raises his hand, causing Tamari to do the same. A great many were completely invested in the match but were disappointed as Shikamaru gives up, making many scream and shout. Winner Tamari Sabaku, Genma announces, as many shout. Mendoku say. I'm tired, Shikamaru says, rubbing his right shoulder and prepares to leave. However suddenly a swirl of leaves form as Sasuke and Kakashi appear back to back, causing the crowd to cheer wildly. Sorry we're late, Kakashi says. You're lucky. Hokage-sama delayed your match but the Uchiha can't compete for a year because of it, Genma says. What? Sasuke hisses but Kakashi pats his shoulder. Ma, it's okay just do well this time, Kakashi says and Sasuke scoffs, as Gaara appears with a sand shunshin. Scene break. A single blue eye opens within Hiruzen's shadow as Sasuke and Gaara's battle begins, the signal should be coming, Naruto thought. Several more eyes open in various parts of the stadium, so Sasuke managed to copy Lee's speed but his stamina is shit, several of the eyes thought. Are all of you ready? Naruto thought. I'm sitting next to Asuma and some of the rookies. I count at least 6 Anbu. Things are about to start, Kurenai relays. I'm with my mother, Hana relays. I have my squad ready. We'll avenge Hayate, Yugao relays. Fu. I'm with Ibiki. I can't wait to add some more souls, Anko relays. Naruto titters in Hiruzen's shadow, happy hunting my queens, he thought, hearing a loud chirping noise. So Senpai taught Sasuke the Chidori, Naruto thought, as Sasuke pierces Gaara's sand orb. A few second tick by as the tension rises, blood. It's my blood, Gaara howls, shocking many in the crowd. Music. Orochimaru theme. Time starts to slow as white feathers rain down on the crowd, while Rasa slowly turns his head towards Hiruzen as a smoke bomb explodes. Rasa rushes towards Hiruzen with a kunai drawn but an arm erupts from Hiruzen's shadow to grab the outstretched arm. Now is that any way for a guest to act Lord Cage, Naruto says, emerging and aiming a hidden blade from his right sleeve at Rasa. The Cage narrowly dodges and launches to the roof with his guards, as Naruto and Hiruzen give chase. Throughout the stadium Suna and Oto Ninja reveal themselves, while Tamari and Kankuro secure Gaara. What is meaning of this Lord Cage? Hiruzen questions. The two guards reveal themselves as the sound 4 and take the 4 points of the roof, Ninpo, Shishi engine, the 4 shout, creating a barrier around the 3 and a second around themselves. Rasa reaches for his veil and rips it away along with his face to reveal Orochimaru, Kukuku. I was hoping to steal Sasuke-kun in the chaos but no matter, he says. Kayaketsuki support me, Hiruzen says and rushes forward, weaving signs. Ninpo. Kawara shuriken, Hiruzen shouts, firing the tiles like shuriken. Orochimaru dodges with a leap and sends snakes from his sleeves but Naruto slices them to pieces with his Chikudo. Hiruzen uses Naruto's left shoulder as a springboard as Orochimaru changes his tongue into a snake to bite him but the cage turns to mud. Doden. Doryu Taiga, Hiruzen shouts. The ground under Orochimaru turns to mud and washes him away, but the snake Sannin flashes signs, but Hiruzen counters. Doden, Doryuden, Hiruzen shouts. A dragon of mud forms and fires several mud bombs, but the Hokage adds flames to it, catching his traitorous student on fire. He combined earth and fire, one Anbu named Monkey says. As expected of Hokage-sama, a second named Frog says. Enough games Orochimaru, Hiruzen says, as Orochimaru rises from the tiles with a smirk on his face. Hiruzen tosses off his robes and cage hat to reveal his ninja gear of a black jumpsuit, with mesh segments over the lower portions of his limbs, and a green gauntlet that covered much of his right arm. He also has a Kabuto armored hood with a bandana like Hitai with 2 long straps. Finally ready to cut loose Lord Third, Naruto says, as Orochimaru tosses off his robes. The tension starts to ramp up as both unleash their chakra outward and cracking the tiles on the roof. Kukuku. I won't go easy on you, sensei, Orochimaru sneers, shifting his gaze to Naruto. I'll need to distract him, Orochimaru thought, as master and student rush forward. Hiruzen unleashes the cage shuriken jutsu as Orochimaru flashes signs and slaps his hands together. Kuchios, Edo Tensai. He shouts. A coffin rises from the roof as a second does the same. We must stop those coffins, Hiruzen shouts. Naruto grabs his shuriken and does the cage shuriken as the third coffin rises, but it halts as shuriken slams into the wood and it sinks. Seems the third wasn't viable, Orochimaru thought. The lids of the coffins clatter on the roof to reveal the bodies of Hashirama and Tobirama Senju. So what will you do now, sensei? No, Lord Third Hokage, Orochimaru sneers. The 2 former cage slowly step out of the coffins with both look cracked and pale. It's been a long time, Saru, Hashirama says. Ho, you've got an old Sarutobi, Tobirama adds. Naruto tosses off his coat as Hiruzen stifles his tears. Indeed it has senseis, Hiruzen says. Saru, that Anbu. I sense the Kyuubi inside him, Tobirama says, and Hiruzen's breath hitches. Naruto's shoulders starts to shake as he reaches for his Anbu mask. I guess nothing escapes the senses of the great second Hokage, he says, tossing it aside. Kukuku. So Naruto-kun, you intend to continue interfering, Orochimaru says. Naruto grins to show his fangs. Of course, Snake. Enko has called for you to die, and as her man I intend to do just that, he says. Orochimaru pulls out 2 kunai with seals attached and slips both into the heads of the brothers, causing their body to regain their vigor. Kukuku. Let's get started with your last day, Sarutobi-sensei, Orochimaru sneers. Naruto, leave this to me. You should deal with the village, Hiruzen says, but Naruto shakes his head. I am already on it, old man. Plus I am dealing with Gaara. I sent my best to deal with him. Besides, my queens are on the hunt, Naruto says, and Hiruzen sighs. Then with Naruto-kun here, my chances go up, Hiruzen thought. Music. Nanatsu no Taizai, the 10 Commandments, loop. The 2 cage slowly start to move and pick up speed as Tobirama moves higher up the roof as Naruto edges behind Hiruzen. Gramps. I'll take Lord Second, Naruto says, and Hiruzen snaps out of his nostalgia with a nod. The pair quickly engage the brothers in a furious rush of taijutsu, with Naruto soon gaining the upper hand by grabbing Tobirama in a release German suplex, before grabbing him by the leg and tossing him at Hashirama. Naruto. Wind, Hiruzen shouts, flashing signs and stopping at Tiger as Naruto does his own signs. Futon. Tappa. Kaden. Karyu Enden, both shout, creating a large inferno and engulfing the brothers. Orochimaru only chuckles as Tobirama weaves to the tiger sign. Sweden. Sujinheki, Tobirama recites. A huge wall of water dozes the flames as Naruto smirks. So this the famed control over water he has, he thought. Tobirama then slaps his hands together as water forms around them. Sweden. Sushoha, he declares. A vortex of water forms around the brothers as Tobirama sends it towards Naruto and Hiruzen. Gramps, behind me, Naruto shouts and flashes signs into a big inhale. Hyoten. Yuki no Kyojin no Ibuki, Naruto thought, expelling a burst of frozen wind. This shocks the Anbu and Orochimaru as the water starts to freeze from Naruto's breath. He possesses the ice release. So it seems Kabuto-kun was correct that Naruto can absorb other bloodlines. Shame he has the Kyuubi, Orochimaru thought. Doden. Doryuheiki, Hiruzen shouts, creating a tall wall of earth and leaps atop it as Naruto joins him. Hashirama walks on the water but shoots forward as Hiruzen leaps down to meet him, firing several flame bullets, but Hashirama swats each one away. Naruto leaps down and weaves several signs as Hiruzen engages Hashirama. Hyoten, Harumoko, Naruto recites, creating a ice tiger. The tiger slams into Hashirama as he punches Hiruzen away, dragging the former along the impromptu lake but shatters from a burst of Hashirama's chakra. Tobirama grabs Naruto from behind and drags him under the water, but the blonde elbows him into the chest, breaking free and shoots to the wall and scaling it like a spider as Hiruzen joins him. Several tight streams of water cut through the earth wall and drain the created lake as both land, but suddenly roots emerge from the roof and earthen wall. This isn't good, Hiruzen thought. Mokuden Haijutsu. Jukai Koden, Hashirama declares. Naruto gasps as a literal forest erupts from the roof, but the vampire sees this as an opportunity as Hiruzen reins in his breath. Kukuku. You look so old right now, Sarutobi-sensei. It is good that I will longer age. Orochimaru sneers and rips his face away, revealing a young woman's face. What have you done? Did you complete that forbidden jutsu? Hiruzen shouts. Orochimaru throws his head back with a wild cackle as the forest hides them from the other Anbu. If you're done grandstanding, I think it is time to end this, Naruto shouts, placing his hand on Hiruzen's shoulder. Kukuku. Do you think you can against the might of the first two Hokage? Orochimaru sneers and Naruto grins. To stop the Edo Tensei, I need to take you down, Naruto shouts, forming a Rasengan in his right hand. Ho! You know Minato's famed jutsu. However, it is useless if you can't get me, Orochimaru says. Naruto reaches into the pouch on his lower back and pulls out 3 familiar-looking kunai, causing Orochimaru's eyes to widen in horror. Stop him! Orochimaru shouts and the Senju brothers rush forward. Naruto tosses the tri-prong kunai forward but throws up a half-ram sign, kunai kage bunshin no jutsu, he says. The 3 kunai become a dozen as Naruto vanishes in a flash to each one, before appearing above Orochimaru. Odama Rasengan, Naruto shouts, his Rasengan growing larger and engulfing the snake Sannin. A pair of arms burst from Naruto's back and weave signs, Mokuden, Jubaku Iso, Naruto adds, as black wood tentacles burst from the ground and capture the Senju brothers. The giant Rasengan continues to grind Orochimaru into the tiles, but with scant white flames starting to emerge on it, causing the Sannin to scream in pain. Still not enough, Naruto thought, as the Rasengan explodes. Naruto lands with his arm burned and smoking as the barrier starts to come down but sees Orochimaru has vanished. Slippery snake, he hisses. Song ends. Scene break. Anbu after him. Hiruzen shouts. The Sarutobi patriarch then turns his attention to the bound cage with a saddened look on his face. We should release them, Naruto says but tilts his head. Then Orochimaru could summon them again, he adds. Then what do you propose, young one? Hashirama says. Naruto bends over to touch his knees as his veins become pronounced, causing Hiruzen to gasp as Mizuki and Jiro slowly emerge from his body. Do it, Naruto hisses. Mizuki and Jiro each weaves the same signs as Hiruzen recognizes them. That is the sequence, Hiruzen says. Fuinjutsu. Shiki Fujin, both declare, slapping their hands together. A dark chill erupts around as the looking figure of the Shinigami appear with his billowing white cloak. It starts to mutter words as black words scrawl across its arms before piercing the souls of Mizuki and Jiro. The pair scream in agony but do as ordered and grab the Senju brothers, before the Shinigami's hand pulls on their souls. Sarutobi. Forgive us, Hashirama says. We've caused a great deal of trouble, Tobirama adds and Hiruzen tears up. The bodies of Senju brother turn white and break down to reveal the corpses of Zaku and Kin. He even sacrificed his own men, Hiruzen says. The Shinigami start to fade away but shifts its gaze to Naruto, before vanishing as Mizuki and Jiro break down as well. Enjoy the Shinigami's stomach. Mizuki-sensei. Naruto sneers, falling on his rear. So you both the Hiraishin and the Shiki Fujin, Hiruzen says. Naruto looks up at Hiruzen but then to the sky. The counter-attack should be beginning, he says. Yes it should, Hiruzen says, as Naruto rises to his feet and conjures his Anbu mask. Orders Lord Third, Naruto says. Drive these invaders from our home Kayaketsuki, Hiruzen orders and Naruto bursts into a murder of crows. Scene break. Kurenai sees the crows fly from the roof as a hawk cries, "That's the signal," she says, standing with the other Jonin. Yosh, it is time to counterattack, Guy shouts and the Jonin vanish, with Kurenai breaking down into rose petals. A few minutes later a group of Suna ninja stand on a building as rose petals land around them. What is this? A Kunoichi says, kneeling down to pick up one. Strangled screams erupt behind her and she quickly stands to whip around, seeing her comrades dead. She takes a hesitant step back as Kurenai stands opposite her with her ruby eyes glowing, causing the Kunoichi's eyes to dim and slowly approach Kurenai. The Kunoichi loosens her vest to show her neck, before Kurenai snakes her right around the Kunoichi's back and swiftly bites her neck. The Kunoichi doesn't struggle as her gray eyes weakly flicker and her movements slow until her body goes limp as Kurenai drops her. The Kunoichi's body soon become rotted and eyes blank, before slowly moving but Kurenai sends a kunai into her head and she turns to dust. Kurenai turns to several kunai piercing her body with the last hitting her between her eyes as she collapses on her back. Several Oto ninja were standing with weapons in their hands. Did you see that? One says. It was like she was drinking her blood, a second says, confused. The leader of the group approaches Kurenai and kicks her leg, before squatting down but Kurenai rears up and rams her right hand through his chest. The Oto ninja quickly go on edge as Kurenai rises to her feet with her hands still through the Oto Jonin but her porcelain skin is a dark brown, 2 long horns were coming from her raven hair. Her red eyes were now a glowing purple with her sclera a black void, her teeth were barred and her fangs were long and sharp past her lip. You are food, nourishment. I will hunt you. Then I will devour you, Kurenai hisses, ripping her hand free and licking it with her now serpent tongue. The Oto ninja slowly take a hesitant step back but Kurenai weaves signs, Megan, Kyofu no Mi, she hisses, as her body vanishes before their eyes. The Oto ninja look around but all of them gasp as the area turns black and eyes open among the darkness, before all sorts of images erupt and bring death upon the Oto ninja. Kurenai watches all of them collapse with the looks of fear and death etched on their faces. Kurenai pulls the kunai from her forehead as the wound seals, before doing the same to the other kunai. Dai Konoha scum, several voices shout and Kurenai slowly turns, before exploding into ravens and cutting down the Oto ninja to move outward from the exam arena. In another part of the village several Suna ninja were racing through the streets but Neko and several Anbu appear on an arch. You will go no further, Neko declares, drawing her sword. Mikazuki no Mai, Neko declares, becoming 3 versions of herself and cutting down the Suna ninja. Captain Neko is rare form today, one Anbu named Crane says. Hayate Gecko was a comrade, Kame says. Enough chatter. Spread out. Neko shouts and the 4 Anbu vanish. Neko removes her mask and her eyes glow, before opening her mouth wide and the blood from the dead moves as it alive toward her open mouth. Neko returns her mask to her face. Poor diets, she thought and vanishes. Scene break. Anko smirks as several Oto ninja claw at their bodies as purple spreads from her rinkaichu. Her lower body was that of a purple snake as she slithers along the road. A clone of her helped Iruka evacuate the academy and civilians, while her real self feeds on Oto ninja. Anko shifts back into human form with a roll of her neck and holds her hands together as they turn purple, before a small smoke cloud forms. Dokujin no Jutsu, Anko says, blowing out a cloud towards the charging Suna ninja. Look out! One shouts, but it was too late. The poison cloud engulfs them and their screams erupt as the nano-size insects spread throughout their bodies. Anko raises her hands and the Rinkaichu leave the corpses and enter. Her hands are visible spots of skin. A howl catches Anko's attention and she smirks. What did Naruto call it, a lichen? She says, as something large lands behind her with a dust-up. I prefer werewolf, a deep and guttural voice says. Anko turns to a hulking figure with dark gray fur, wolf head and glowing purple eyes. Blood dripping from its large claws and feet, wearing human clothes of a form-fitting flak vest and black shorts. Where's your mom? Anko asks. Hana wipes some slobber from her maw. She went ahead, she says, as the triplets land behind her. Several shuriken charge them, but Hana swipes her large paw and adds some futon to deflect them. Come on, you three. Gatenga, Hana shouts, turning a spinning vortex with her ninkin and shredding the hapless Suna ninja. Sanae Jashu, Anko shouts, sending snakes from her sleeves and biting any ninja that got past Hana. We should pick up the pace. Plus no need for others to see this side of us, Anko says. Hana slowly shifts back into her human form with a crack of her joints. Right, not even mom hasn't seen this, she says, and both vanish with Shunshin. Scene break. Danzo under Naruto's Anbu guise watches the Sand siblings leave, having used his Sharingan to influence Gaara on a better path and influence Temari to become Kazekage. Danzo was under orders by Naruto to defeat Gaara quickly and put him on a better path, using the Gogyo Fuin to shut out Shukaku and several jutsu put Gaara down. The redhead looked afraid that his life was at an end, but using Kotoamatsukami things changed quickly. I cannot believe I Danzo Shimura. Student of Tobarama Senju would a puppet of a boy. Still in his teens, Danzo thought and clenches his fist. Curse Hiruzen, you not giving me the boy, he thought. Danzo then turns his attention to Sasuke. Sasuke Uchiha secure Sakura Haruno and return to the village, but be wary of enemy shinobi, he says. Who are you? Sasuke says. I'm an Anbu. Now go, Danzo says. Sasuke shoots Danzo a glare but grabs Sakura and leaps away as the older man sighs. So you can do as told, a voice croons. Danzo turns to be hit by several crows and cover his body until Naruto reforms around him. Good work, Danzo, Naruto says, rolling his neck. The day ended in Konoha's victory as Oto and Suna retreated in earnest. Many lost their lives in the invasion, but Konoha did not fall. A week passed and a mass funeral was held for who died. Naruto and his queen stayed on the fringes of the funeral with Kurenai, Hana and Anko interacting with other Jonin and Genin, while Naruto and Yugao performed their Anbu duties.